These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at hellofresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.
For Hire, how the CIA and U.S. Army recruit mercenaries for White Rhodesia. It's a historical reprint of what appears to be a 1979 pamphlet, basically. This is from the introduction. It does have an ISBN number. It is available in book sources. In Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, actually this must have been published post-1980 because they're referencing Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, 270,000 white settlers, mostly immigrated since World War II, controlled the government and economy, ruling over the 7 million black Africans. The Zimbabweans cannot vote. They have been forced off the bulk of the arable land, and they have no democratic rights whatsoever. All labor performance in Zimbabwe is black labor, and it is intensely exploited, often at less than subsistence wages. Zimbabweans have been fighting European invaders since the early 17th century. Since the 1890s, they have been directly ruled by Europeans, at first in the form of a private British corporation, the British South Africa Company. Since 1923, direct political rule has been in the hands of the white settlers, currently led by Ian Smith and his fascist Rhodesian Front Party. It's important to note that the white settlers were originally given this direct local power as a, quote, self-governing colony of the British government, thereby creating a master-caretaker relationship. During these past 80-odd years, Western imperialism, the multinational corporations of the United States, Britain, and South Africa, has extracted huge profits from the exploited and oppressed Zimbabwean population via the subsidiaries of the Anglo-Americans, Lonrho, Amex, AMAX, Union Carbide, Mobil, ITT, and other corporations. They fully intend to continue doing so as long as they can. The white settler minority has been rewarded for their violent subjugation of the Zimbabwean people with perhaps the highest national standard of living in the world. Sir Roy Walensky, the former Prime Minister of the Central African Federation, which included what is now Rhodesia, once said, "This man Smith has an appeal. It's the appeal of an easy life. For $6,000 a year, you can have 5 servants, a swimming pool, and a lot." Beginning during the early 1960s, however, the Zimbabwean nationalist forces under the leadership of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, evolved the strategy of guerrilla war to liberate their people and land. It is proving to be very successful. There are 20,000 guerrillas in base camps in Tanzania and Mozambique, over 3,000 in Zimbabwe itself, and this number is continually rising. In a meeting between Stephen Solars, a U.S. congressman, and the ZANU guerrilla leaders, they were reported to reject the possibility of enlisting the assistance of Cuban or other foreign troops, declaring that if we cannot liberate ourselves, we do not deserve to be liberated. Despite Western propaganda to the effect that the U.S. and British only wish to avoid a bloodshed in Rhodesia, don't forget the Zimbabweans have been bleeding for almost a century, their real fear is that the liberation struggle will win. With this victory in sight, it is not surprising that the counterattack by the Smith regime has become more vicious and brutal. Actually, this must have been published pre-1980, because this is when Smith was still in power in Rhodesia. More than 250,000 rural Zimbabweans have been forced into concentration camps. Terrorist raids have been conducted against Zimbabwean refugees in Mozambique. Dusk to dawn shoot-on-sight curfews have been instituted and enforced in the border areas. And escalating counterinsurgency attacks have been launched against the military arm of the liberation struggle, the Zimbabwean People's Army, ZIPA. It is crucial for Westerners to understand that the Smith regime has not stood alone in this barbaric campaign. This pamphlet documents the critically important element in U.S. imperialism's support for the Smith regime, white mercenary reinforcements for the fascist Rhodesian, quote, security forces. This flow of U.S. mercenaries to prop up white Rhodesia is an important, though secret, part of U.S. imperialism's strategy for Africa. The U.S. has massive investments in southern Africa. Zimbabwe alone supplies the bulk of high-grade chrome ore used in the U.S. for jet engines and other advanced technological items. Coal, copper, and other minerals are ripped out of Zimbabwe for U.S. industry. Mobil Oil, Texaco, Hertz Rent-A-Cars, Holiday Inns, and many other U.S. corporations operate illegally in Rhodesia through foreign subsidiaries. More important still is South Africa, the fortress of U.S. interests in Africa, where $1.5 billion is invested by GM, IBM, Ford, and other giant multinational corporations. The liberation of Zimbabwe would, for the first time, penetrate the buffer zone of satellite countries protecting the borders of South Africa. South African guerrilla fighters who are already trained by the thousands in camps in Tanzania and Zambia would have direct access.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. A lot coming up on the program today. In the first hour, I want to get into my rant over on HartmannReport.com about why the media needs a true reckoning about the public good. I'll get to that in just a moment. And also in the first hour, the 3 stories that you must know today. We'll get to those. In our second hour, Lynn Parramore is going to drop by. There is this extraordinary COVID-fueled mental health crisis that will be as costly as the pandemic, or could be. It's just a mind-boggling story. Lynn will be with us in the second hour and tell you all about that. And in our third hour, the political divide. Scientists are weighing in about our political divide today. Normally, when countries face a crisis, people come together, like, think World War II in the United States. But we're facing a horrible crisis right now, and it's splitting people apart. Why is that? What's going on with that? We'll get into that in the third hour. So, but I want to start with my rant for the day, which is why the media needs a true reckoning about serving the public good, which is the title of our piece over at HartmannReport.com. Donald Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of the United States. And yet, for the last 6 years, including the last year of his presidency, he got better press coverage than Joe Biden has for the first year of his presidency. I mean, and why is this? Where the hell did this come from? Well, the fact is that our media, particularly our broadcast media, is a business. And it profits when viewership and listenership goes up. And Donald Trump, who NBC spent millions to train as a reality TV star, is walking, talking clickbait. Remember Les Moonves back in early 2016 saying, "I've never seen anything like this. This is going to be a very good year for us. Sorry, it's a terrible thing to say, but bring it on, Donald. Keep going. May not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS." Yeah, CBS made profits, NBC, ABC, everything, right across all these networks and media all across the board. And, all we got was this Donald Trump T-shirt. Well, Donald Trump is a president. So what do we do about this? Well, there's a few people who are calling this out right now, and kudos to them. Dana Milbank over at the Washington Post, Eric Boehlert with his newsletter, PressRun.media, Brian Stelter with his show on CNN, Reliable Sources. They have all been pointing out that the media coverage right now of Joe Biden is more negative than the media coverage was for any of Donald Trump's, basically 5 years, arguably 6, in the public eye with regard to this election. And the sixth being this last year, the first being the year of the primary, 2015. We need to do something about this. I started in news in the 1960s at WITL, and I did the news in the morning, and also I was the Capitol and City police blotter. I was on that beat. I remember when Louise and I went, we were dating at the time, and she came with me. We went to interview the mayor of Lansing, Michigan, Jerry Graves, about this new $1 million piece of art that they had just bought to put in front of the city capitol, or the city, whatever it is, the main city building. And I asked him, so what does this symbolize? And he goes, oh, I don't know, infinity, something like that, It was like, we still joke about it, but it's like, back then we had to report the news. I had a news director, his name was Bob Brakeman, and I was, an SDS kind of, hippie and SDS activist, and I wanted to report the news through my perspective, and Bob was like, no, if you work for me, you're just going to report the facts and let people draw their own conclusions. He said, if you ever have your own radio show, then you can, offer your opinion. We had one in the afternoon on WITL. It was one of the 3 owners of the show, a guy by the name of Chuck Mefford. He was Chuck Drake on the air. And in fact, I would produce his show from time to time. And that was a 1-hour opinion show every afternoon. But that was it. So anyhow, but that was because we were operating under the fairness doctrine. And it was also because the station was locally owned. That WITL at that time was owned by 3 guys, 3 middle-class families, who got together and mortgaged their houses to build this radio station. One was a radio sales guy. He'd been working in the business. Another was Chuck. He was an old radio guy. And then there was an engineer. I forget his name. And the 3 of them, pooled their money and built this radio station. And back then, I worked at WITL, I worked at WFMK, I worked at WVIC, I worked at WJIM. I worked at a whole bunch of different radio, and WJIM was a TV station. I worked at all of these stations in the late 60s, early 70s. Every single one of them was owned by a local family or a local business that was, basically family owned. Every single one of them. None of them are anymore, to the best of my knowledge. Why? Because in 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that blew up the law that required local ownership of radio and TV stations and newspapers. So where are we now? Well, as Dana Milbank notes in the Washington Post, quote, Trump got roughly twice as much coverage in 2020 as Biden has received in 2021, and the coverage of Biden is noticeably more negative than the tone of news coverage overall. Predictably, Breitbart and the New York Post are among the most negative outlets, but even liberal ones such as Huffington Post and Salon have been negative about Joe Biden. And then Eric Boehlert sums it up. He says, despite the loud claims from journalists that news outlets were tough on Trump for 4 years, it's not true. On the flip side, scribes reject the claim that they've been overly harsh covering Biden in recent months, but they have been. And then Brian Stelter, of course, calls this out on CNN every Sunday. But here's the deal. Right now we've got Donald Trump and a Trump faction within the GOP, which is like 90% of the GOP now, who are openly working to subvert our democracy. I'll get into that in just a moment. And we need access to accurate news and information without spin. I mean, it's fine if you're tuning into like my program. This is an opinion show. I don't pretend it's news. I'll share the news and I'll give you my opinion on it. And if you don't like it or you disagree, you're welcome to call up and debate it with me. But that's a completely different thing from news organizations that prior to 1987, when we had a fairness doctrine, had to actually report the news. And prior to 1996, outside of the 3 big networks, were locally owned. Reporting actual news. These are really dangerous times, and having these news organizations put profits over democracy is a sure path to our ending up like Hungary, with Viktor Orban, where he a so-called conservative who is running his country for his oligarch buddies, his stations and targeting minorities, and he has shut down anything resembling a free press in Hungary. You know, we used to have these strict standards because of the fairness doctrine and the ownership rules, and they've been blown up. And frankly, I think that Congress needs to be looking at these things again. They need to be asking the question, should we go back to local ownership rules? Should we be breaking up some of these media monopolies? Is it time for us to revisit the fairness doctrine, maybe in a brand new form for the 21st century, including electronic media? I think it is. Or at the very least, time to start the conversation. What say you? We'll be back in just a moment, 14 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the place where despair is not an option, and yes, we are working on solutions right here. And welcome back, 15 minutes past the hour. Will in Orlando, Florida. Hey, Will, thanks for watching us on Facebook Live. What's up?
Oh, not much, Tom. This is a subject that I've been talking about for decades now. And the reality of the situation is, while Clinton had banned, or not banned, but had gotten rid of the requirement of local ownership, it was also Reagan that had blown up the FCC.
Right.
And
in 87, yeah.
Right, in 87. But, I think it was 83 or 84 where the news program 2020 was the very first news program to ever actually make a profit. And since then, news has gotten further and further away from the truth and has become more of an entertainment factor. I think, personally, that we need to bolster the FCC, and we need to start requiring that news organizations tell the truth at least 50% of the time. And there's not a single news organization out there.
That's a fairly low bar, Will. I know.
Well, I know. But here's where it gets absurd. At 50%, there's still not a single news organization on the planet that meets that standard.
Yeah.
At 50%. So we could start there and start to move it forward. I don't know necessarily if the fairness doctrine is really going to solve anything, because as it is, we have news organizations that put a dozen talking heads on the screen, and they all say a bunch of nonsense. I think there needs to be a check on reality so that when one of these talking heads starts lying, blatantly lying, they're called out for it and removed from the program.
Here's the problem with this, Will. If you're going to require radio and television stations, for example, and I mean, we could extend this to websites or newspapers or whatever, but if you're going to require anybody to tell the truth by law, who gets to decide what the truth is?
Well, I would like to think that it be based on facts and provable evidence.
Whose
the
facts?
same standards that. Well, I mean,
look at the last 40 years. Up until about a decade ago, there was a so-called fact-based debate about global warming.
Well, that's partly as true, but if the anti-argument for like global warming, for instance, is just basically hearsay and nothing that's scientifically proven, then a person shouldn't be allowed to go on a television station or a radio station or a newspaper and make claims. I mean, the latest evidence shows that vaccines do not cause autism, yet you still have people out there that are echoing the rumor that autism is caused by vaccines.
Right.
And anytime they have anybody on a television show or a radio show who says that, it just simply reinforces that idea. Even if the person on the television is proven wrong, it reinforces this untrue statement. I think that the news industry, is protected by the Constitution for a reason, not entertainment. And I think that there needs to be more requirements from our government and the FCC to require stations, news organizations to report actual news. And whatever the Kardashians are wearing this week is not news. It shouldn't be on TV.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at somewhat less draconian solutions, because if we set up a Department of the Truth in the federal government and Donald Trump becomes president again, you know where that's going to go.
Well,
so what I'm saying is if you've got competition, if you bring back competition, if you bring back local ownership of the media, I think you'll accomplish the same thing.
Hopefully. But yeah, we can certainly start there.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, thanks, Tom.
Well, thanks for the call. Yeah, good rant. Thank you. 18 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with the 3 stories you must know today. Stick around. It's, well, like I said, it's now 19 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Welcome back. Time for 3 stories you must know. Number 1, the Senate voted last night to repeal the Biden administration's vaccine and testing policy. Joe Biden, through the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, Joe Biden promulgated a rule, or, the Biden administration put forward a rule saying that any company with more than 100 employees had to have all their employees vaccinated. Actually, any entity, which would include state governments. And you've got now 4 judges, 1 district court judge and 3 appeals court judges all at the same time. So it's basically 2 court rulings. But all 4 of these judges were Trump appointees, and all 4 of them have said, nope, you can't do that. So it's on hold right now. And every Republican in the Senate, this was led by Mike Braun, the Republican from Indiana, backed this piece of legislation, a law that says you can't mandate vaccines, which is just insane, right? I mean, for example, here's how well vaccine mandates work. The Los Angeles School District, which has 73,000 employees, mandated vaccines. And the deadline was this week. And sure enough, this week they fired all of the employees who refused to get vaccinated. Out of the 73,000 employees of the Los Angeles school system, they had to fire 500 people, roughly. Actually, it's a little fewer than 500 people. Vaccine mandates work. Here in the state of Oregon, we got 40,000 state employees, and we had to fire about 24 because they wouldn't get vaccinated. But, this is just crazy. And by the way, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and John Tester of Montana, obviously responding to right-wingers in their own states. I get it. They voted, against the administration and with all the Republicans. Okay, story number 1. Story number 2, Georgia Republicans passed this law, this Senate Bill 202, which allows the Republican-controlled state election board to take control of county boards. It used to be county boards were answerable to voters in the counties. And so in largely black counties, for example, to no one's surprise, mostly black people were running the county election boards because they lived in those counties. You want people who represent the neighborhood, who represent the community, to be the people that you encounter when you go to vote. I remember, I've told the story a million times. My mom was an election volunteer, and the elementary school was right down the street from our house. And I used to sit there when I was 7 years old next to her while she checked people in to vote. And everybody knew everybody, right? We all lived in the same neighborhood. It's the way it should be. Well, what the Republicans have done in Georgia is they have said, no, we're going to take over these county election boards, which are filled with mostly black, mostly Democratic folks. And we're going to replace them with exclusively white, exclusively Republican people who are going to decide who gets to vote and who doesn't, who gets a provisional ballot that may not be counted and who doesn't, and whether or not, the poll watchers from the Proud Boys can walk around with their machine guns or whatever. And this, by the way, this is from Reuters. Protesters filled the meeting room of the Spalding County Board of Elections in October. A year ago, Sunday voting had been instrumental in boosting black voter turnout, but this was an entirely different 5-member board that had overseen the last election. The Democratic majority of 3 black women was gone, so was the black elections supervisor. Now the faction of 3 white Republicans controlled the board, thanks to a bill passed, blah-de-blah. And the Spalding board's new chairman has endorsed Donald Trump's false stolen election claims on social media. It's nuts. Story number 2. Story number 3 is Mark Meadows. Have you seen this thing, this document that he produced, this PowerPoint presentation that they were presenting to members, Republican members of Congress in preparation for January 6th? This is insane. I tweeted it out this morning. It's over at Scribd. And you can actually read the whole thing online. It's titled Election Fraud, Foreign Interference, and Options for January 6th. This is the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States and the former member of the Cokehead Caucus, also known as the Freedom Caucus, but I call them the Cokeheads because, they're all funded by organizations associated with the Koch brothers. But Mark Meadows. This is crazy. The talking points. It opens. It's titled January 5th, 2021. It opens talking points. The Chinese systematically gained control over our election system, constituting a national security emergency. Number 1. Number 2, the electronic voting machines were compromised and cannot be trusted to provide an accurate vote count. And hand counts reported by the media are not really hand counts and are easily subverted. Then they go to summary of domestic voter fraud. Occurred in 8 contested states: Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. And what is he alleging that they found? Double votes, deceased voters, out-of-state and out-of-county voters, non-citizen or felon voters, fake ballots, ballot stuffing, and other illegal ballots in violation of state law. And then you go through this, and basically what they're doing is they're taking the vote totals as they were coming in from people who actually showed up to physically vote, which was mostly Republicans because they were not afraid of the pandemic, and noting that Trump was ahead early on as the vote totals were coming in. And then when the mail-in ballots get dumped in one giant pile which was mostly Democrats, and we all knew this. We all knew this was coming. This was why Trump wanted to stop the count. Remember, the night of the election, he was like, okay, let's stop the count right there, because they hadn't yet added in all the mail-in ballots. It's why he put Louis DeJoy in charge of the post office to destroy over 200 high-speed sorting machines to slow down those mail-in ballots. They knew it was going to be Democrats. And so there's all these graphs showing, hey, look at this moment. Suddenly the Democratic vote picks up. Well, that's when the mail-in votes came in. So what does he conclude from this? Key issue. China has leveraged financial, non-governmental, and foreign allies, including Venezuela, to acquire influence and control over U.S. voting infrastructure in at least 28 states. It is part of an ongoing globalist socialist operation to subvert the will of the United States voters and install a China ally. That would be Joe Biden. They're alleging he's a China ally. So what are they going to do? Brief senators and congressmen on foreign interference, declare a national emergency, declare electronic voting in all states invalid. And then for at the very end, it says, Vice President seats Republican electors over the objections of Democrats in states where fraud occurred. In other words, steal the election. This is mind-boggling.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Like I said, you can find this Mark Meadows' actual PowerPoint document on my Twitter feed. We'll be back. It's another great day to make a contribution to Free Speech TV, progressive television. We are the only progressive television of any consequence in the United States. No recycled Republicans here on this network, like you will find on others who may occasionally have a progressive point of view. This is it, right here. And it exists because of your support. And you can call now, 877-378-8669. And one of the reasons why it's a really great day to support Free Speech TV is because, God bless her, Mary in Kentucky has put up a $5,000 match. Your contributions will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 by Mary in Kentucky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for supporting Free Speech TV. If you are calling today, 877-378-8669, and making your contribution. It is much needed. It keeps this network going, It's basically how Free Speech TV operates. No corporate money. It's all coming from our viewers. And, there's a lot of viewers out there. We need more, of course. Please reach out to your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. You could even, I've gotten correspondence from people who at the very bottom under their signature line, it just says, watch Free Speech TV on Dish or Direct, channel, whatever it is, things like that. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can kind of slip the message in when you're communicating with people, or if you're sending out holiday cards, this time of year and that sort of thing. So, and why are we supporting Free Speech TV? Because Free Speech TV is a progressive network that does embrace the progressive values that have really turned America into America over the past 100 years. I mean, just look at some of the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, 877-378-8669. What has the Democratic Party brought us? How about the women's right to vote? Woodrow Wilson oversaw that one. Social Security, that was Franklin Roosevelt. The minimum wage law, Franklin Roosevelt. Actually, the next few are FDR. The minimum wage law, unemployment insurance, the Rural Electrification Act, the FDIC bank account insurance, and the GI Bill of Rights, and the Securities and Exchange Act. That was all FDR. The Marshall Plan, that was Harry Truman, as was NATO, as was the school lunch program and the Water Quality Act of 1948. The Peace Corps came from John Kennedy, the first man on the moon. John Kennedy, the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, LBJ, Medicare, Medicaid, LBJ, the Guaranteed Pell Student Loan Program, LBJ, Operation Head Start, LBJ, Workers' Compensation Insurance, LBJ, the Motor Voter Act, Bill Clinton, the Clinton budget surplus, obviously Bill Clinton, the Family and Medical Leave Act, Bill Clinton, the Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama. And then, of course, look at what Joe Biden has been doing for the last year. Some just extraordinary things, including the American Rescue Plan, and now we're working on Build Back Better. So this list of Democratic accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, who are offering you these special premiums right now. If you call now to make your contribution at 877-378-8669 or text FSTV to 44-321, $20 contribution, Free Speech TV bumper sticker. $50 contribution, Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag, or the Free Speech TV socks that were previously a $100 value, but they're on sale for the holidays. A $75 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice, the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you can get an autographed copy of my newest book. Makes a great gift, by the way. The Hidden History of American Healthcare, why sickness bankrupts you and makes others insanely rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, there is the Zoom meet and greet where we get together and kind of party together for an hour. And with a $1,000 gift, there is the come to Portland and visit us once we've all figured out this pandemic thing. It might be a while, but hey, $1,000 to Free Speech TV is a big deal. It means an awful lot. So if you can, feel free to get in line. And of course, those are all one-time gifts. Another way that you can support Free Speech TV is by making a regular monthly contribution, and even small regular monthly contributions. We've had $5 Fridays and things like that. Even $5 is a big deal. 10, 20, 30, whatever you could afford. You can do both. You can make a one-time contribution and a month-by-month contribution. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. So 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV needs your help right now. It's not, this network is not going to stay on the air without viewer support. And, thank God for over 20 years, viewers have been supporting Free Speech TV. Well, thank you, actually, because for over 20 years, viewers like you have supported Free Speech TV, kept this network on the air, kept things going and rolling and all that sort of thing, kept the electrons traveling to the satellites and into your home. It's not a small thing. It's really kind of a miracle when you consider it. And that miracle only exists because you or people like you have supported this television network. So if you've never called before in particular, call now, 877-378-8669, and help out Free Speech TV. This is an extraordinary network. It's the end of the year. It's a tax-deductible contribution. And, it's a great organization. There's none better. So please call now. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Remember Reno 911, the old Comedy Central mockumentary play on the old cop shows? Well, they're reprising. They're bringing the gang back to go track down QAnon. There's an article about it and the trailer. The tease for the show is over at Raw Story right now if you're curious. So, anyhow, let's pick up your phone calls here. Bob in San Jose, California. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind today?
Well, I go back to the early days of magnetic tape and radio. And you may remember this. A machined aluminum block on the tape head cover of an Ampex reel-to-reel machine.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Machined aluminum. You remember seeing a machined aluminum block mounted on the head cover of a reel-to-reel tape recorder?
I do.
That machined aluminum block was designed for splicing tape, but it also was designed for editing tape.
Yes.
It was made by a company called the Editol Company.
Yeah, I used to do that. We would slice the tape with a razor blade, and then we put it back together with this little white tape that held it together and allowed it to, yeah, I remember it well.
Correct. You remember it well. The point I'm getting to is that was when you go out and record a news story, and then you bring it back to the station, you end up having to shorten it, and because you don't have 15 minutes to tell one story.
Right.
So you're selecting the words that people will see and hear, and with video today, you can even do that. You can take syllables out of words.
Right.
And that's the problem: is who decides what words in what order.
I agree.
And that can bias a story considerably.
I agree.
And only the people who participated can catch that and realize, wait a minute, that's not what really happened.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I am not calling for a Department of Truth in any government, because, who defines what truth is? But I do think that if we were to go back, if we were to undo the ownership provisions of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, prior to 1996, an individual corporation or family could not own a radio station, a television station, and a newspaper in the same state. They could not own, or in the same city. They could not own multiple, there was a limit. I think it was 10 or 20 radio stations within a state or a region. They couldn't own multiple television stations. So you had all this local ownership, and you had diffuse ownership of radio and TV stations and newspapers. And the result was that we had a news ecosystem that was competitive and that was generally honest. I mean, that was one of the things that organizations competed on. Now that you've got, 3 or 4 companies that own probably 90% of all the radio stations in the United States, a handful of companies that own most of the television stations, and social media. I mean, Facebook is the largest provider of news in the entire United States, and it's one single corporation owned by a cranky right-wing billionaire. We got a problem, and I think breaking them up is a part of the solution, Bob.
I agree, but I think there's another little piece you have to consider, and that is that when you look at a newsroom, you're looking at a staff of lots of people. A typical TV station might have 2 people go out, one holding the camera, one standing in front of it, and then they come back and edit the thing, and it becomes a 2-minute or minute and a half story that gets put into the evening news. Well, Rupert Murdoch, back in about 2000, with a cable thing called Fox News, eliminated a lot of the reporting and hired retired generals and admirals and people like that to sit around a coffee table
and pontificate.
And it's all opinion all the time. That was much cheaper.
You're right. And that grew out of reality TV, actually, Bob. Which came out of a strike back in the was it the late 80s, early 90s? I think it was in the 90s, where there was the writers' strike in Hollywood, and so in response to that, the network started programming reality TV, and then that was so successful that the news organization started doing this thing, which has now become normal, which is where the host, and this is what they do. This is how you can tell a strong host from a weak host, right? This is Rachel Maddow, for example, is a very, very strong host, and she never does this. Nicole Wallace, on the other hand, a fairly weak host. She'll present a news story, and then she'll bring on 3 people to discuss it for the next 15 minutes. And that's that cheap programming that you're talking about. And it also takes the pressure off the host to carry the entire show. But
see, Murdoch forced this on the industry. People in their homes with cable TV have and they can remotely change channels. As they're changing channels, some of those channels are over-the-air TV stations that are distributed by the cable company. Others of those channels never were over-the-air, but they came by satellite, Fox News being one of those. And the advertisers, who want to advertise in that cable system, can only really place their ads in the cable channels. They can't replace ads in an over-the-air TV station.
Right.
And so what happened was Fox News got a lot of the advertising because they were cheaper.
Oh, interesting.
And that caused over-the-air TV stations to literally close a lot of bureaus and things. So they literally are now mostly all opinion all the time. And Rupert Murdoch killed off real reporting.
I think that's largely true. And as a follow-up to that, Bob, you might want to just plug into your favorite search engine. Mine is DuckDuckGo. Rupert Murdoch is the cancer at the heart of Australian democracy, and Kevin Rudd, R-U-D-D, the former Prime Minister of Australia. That's the title of a piece that he wrote for the Sydney Morning Herald, which is easily found. And he just indicts Murdoch and the family for what they did to Australia, then what they did to the United Kingdom, and then what they did to the United States, becoming billionaires, multi-billionaires in the process. Bob, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from an old radio guy who knows what was going on. Kurt in Akron, Ohio. Hey, Kurt, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for taking the call. You're touching on a subject. I'm actually an old-time radio enthusiast. Mm-hmm. All right. That's actually my hobby, is old-time radio. And I'm not old enough to remember back in the 60s and stuff like that, obviously. But, I listened to some old air checks of stations of historic events, like, the Kennedy assassination out of Dallas, or the Kent State shooting from a college radio station known as WKSU. Mm-hmm. And it's just amazing how, especially the WKSU stuff, where the students, that was a student-run program or student-run station out of Kent State University. Right. And people would call in with their information because they were the quote-unquote official news source for what was going on that weekend back in 1970. And to listen to this real-time stuff going on of people living this stuff, and people would call in with their information, and they would actually stop. These students would actually stop the callers and say, can you prove it? If you can't, you need to call this number and find out if it's a rumor or if it's fact.
Right. There was a different standard then.
They had different, even for a college radio station, they had different standards in 1970. And it's just amazing. Oh, and then do you remember the mobile units? Like the on-the-scene mobile units?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, they had mobile units, and I actually listened on the Kent State website. They had the mobile unit recordings, and I thought, man, this is like Russia. I can't believe this is happening in Kent, Ohio in 1970.
Well, Nixon was president,
unit, right, and they had the mobile unit recording at this time. Mm-hmm. The State Highway Patrol in Portage County, Ohio, stopping the mobile units because those guys were violating curfew at that time because Mayor Satram had put a curfew on, and you can hear them getting pulled out of the car and talking about police brutality. And this is why I'm an old radio enthusiast because.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Because finish your sentence.
Because my thought is that's how history is learned. If you can actually listen to it in real time and unfiltered, That's how you understand it. And then you're thinking, wow, it kind of puts you right in there, even though you weren't there.
Yeah.
Plus, being where I'm from, I know people who were actually at that event. So I have that luxury of hearing people who were actually affected by it.
Yeah.
So
it's important stuff, you know, and we used to have, there used to be these standards. Kurt, thank you for the call. Two quick stories. Number one, Ellen Ratner, when she ran Talk Radio News Service, remember they used to come on our show every day and do the news. The company no longer exists, and Ellen is kind of retired, but they trained interns, literally from all over the world. They'd come to the United States, and one time she asked me to speak to a group of interns, and who were in our studio. There was a half a dozen of them. They were doing a little mock television program, and I was listening to their on-the-air program in which they were discussing news, and one of them was telling the others what they had learned in journalism school that day, which was that you have to pick stories that people want to hear. Because if people are seeing things on the news that they don't want to see or they don't want to hear, that they're not interested in, they'll tune away and the station will lose advertising revenue. And I'm like, that should not be your metric. Your metric should be what is important, whether people want to hear it or not. And they were like, oh, no, you can't do that. This, so number one. And number two, when I first moved to Portland back in 2000, whatever the year was, maybe you remember, Sean, we were doing, and Sean was working with me, it was like 2005 or thereabouts, and I was doing a local show on the local Clear Channel station, KPOJ, which is part of a 5-station pod. And we had, at least a dozen people in the newsroom, Sean? I mean, you were there. It was at least a dozen who were working news on a 24-hour cycle. And then Mitt Romney's company, Bain Capital, came in and bought Clear Channel. And by the time we left that station, there was one guy in the newsroom, and only during the kind of office hours things. So anyhow, end of rant. I've still got a board full of callers here. I'll pick up your calls right after this. 45 minutes past the hour. Well, it's 46 minutes past the hour now. Here on the Thom Hartmann Program, it's our truth defense, right? I mean, what was the old phrase? Truthiness? Is that Stephen Colbert, I think? Yeah. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archive.
It's talk media for the rest of us. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Maverick. WGN?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, and happy birthday. Let me be the first.
It's not my birthday.
Well, I know somebody beat me to Happy Holidays, so I got them there.
Happy Holidays.
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, and in that city there was a radio station that was WGN. I think it was AM 720. This was a while back. They also owned Channel 9, which was a local television station. And back in the 70s, when I was a kid, there were only 4 stations, I think, in the city, except for a couple of obscure ones on the very high frequency. Mm-hmm. And they also owned the Chicago Tribune. And that's why WGN is WGN. It stood for World's Greatest Newspaper. And it was before that law that said that you couldn't own all of them, so they were kind of
grandfathered in, though. I mean, that went back to the 20s, and these laws were put into place in the 30s.
Right. And I didn't know if you were aware of that, and I've heard this subject brought up, on occasion over the last 5 years that I've been listening, and I just wanted to. I was only
vaguely aware of it, but I'll take your word for it, Maverick. But
and here's an interesting little, very quick story about WGN is. They had a radio transmit tower that was 100,000 watts of effective radiated power, which is huge.
Yeah.
And
that's
it was
the
so
top
powerful.
of the limit for Clear Channel.
Yeah. I used to work for Clear Channel. I don't want to talk about it.
I mean, there used to be a category called Clear Channel stations, and they were called. These were the bottom third of the AM band, and it was because they would blow out such a big signal that you couldn't have other stations on that channel that might interfere with it. And therefore, they were called Clear Channel stations, and typically they maxed out at 50,000 watts.
I forgot about that. Well, this station was so powerful that I knew people that had chain link fences, like cyclone fencing, in their backyards in the western suburbs of Chicago, that you could sometimes hear the radio station on the fence. And it was, and that's also why there's Cubs fans in Alaska, and there are to this day, because that station was so powerful that at night, when AM would bounce off the atmosphere and back down the earth, you could listen to Cubs games in Fairbanks.
Yeah. Well, that's like, Alan Berg, the progressive talk radio host who was murdered by the skinheads. This was before Limbaugh. Talk radio was progressive in America. And he was on this huge station in Denver that was blowing a signal over 27 states. And same deal, it was a Clear Channel station, not the company, but the designation, the FCC designation. Good one.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
All right. Hey, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Maverick. Good to hear from you. And I see I only have 27 seconds. It wouldn't be fair to somebody to put them on with that little time. So let me just say, I continue to believe that this is, what our callers are talking about is the era before the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which did two really terrible things. Number one, it eliminated the ownership caps on radio, television, and newspapers, and the local ownership requirements. It eliminated those. And number two, it gave immunity to organizations like Facebook with regard to content, so that, if outrageous content was on their platforms, they could not be held to account for it. That's called Section 230. And there's all these calls to revise Section 230, which I completely agree with. Even Facebook is saying now, please, hold us responsible, please. We can't do it ourselves. We'll be right back. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capital Switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. And welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Sean in North Platte, Nebraska. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how's your day?
Good. No complaints.
Hey, I have talked to several of my progressive and Democratic friends about the news media. Fox News, One America News, and Newsmax are three things. But, I tell them, MSNBC and CNN are not your friends either. Look at how they told Ed Schultz not to cover the Bernie campampaigne back in 2016.
They fired him over it.
Yep.
Ed was a good friend of mine. I tracked that whole story. I was hearing it from Ed himself. Yes.
Yeah. And like for another example, like you had some of your other callers calling about reality TV show, NBC will put on the Kardashians, and Fox News will put on Duck Dynasty to take people's eyes off the ball.
Well, I think they're doing it to make money, frankly, Sean. I don't think that NBC is being programmed for ideological reasons. The reason that MSNBC has as many progressive hosts as they do, and they've got a couple of particularly good ones. I think Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow do a good job in the evening. Is because it makes money. There's a market niche. There's an unserved market opportunity there that NBC is picking, or through MSNBC has picked up, and that that's an indication of what happens when you have competition in a marketplace, and in this case the cable marketplace. Is that there's an opportunity for multiple points of view, but it's at the end of the day what they're looking at is their profits. I get it. The Ed Schultz thing, also the same thing with Cenk Uygur, also tried out. He was on MSNBC for a while, and he was too progressive for them. I think in my opinion. But there's several of them.
There's several of them I could mention, but I probably don't have time. So know.
Yeah, no, I get it. And so we just have to be wise consumers of our media. Sean, thank you for the call, and thanks for pointing that out. Tim in Rockville, Maryland. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hi, thanks, Tom, for taking the call.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to your original rant and the undertone of the lack of truth today, and I'll lay the blame at Congress's feet. And this is from conversations directly with Congressman Raskin and his staff, and recommending after alt-fact became an issue that they get on that quickly due to the impact it could have to the culture of the federal government. And we went back and forth, and we've gone back and forth over this. And my contention is that it's an issue of disruption, not taking away their First Amendment rights.
What is an issue of disruption? What's the it you're talking about?
Not telling the truth.
Oh, I see.
For example, let me give you an example. Well, I told him a lie was going to eventually be something that was going to really cause him serious problems, and the big lie did.
Yeah.
And what I've recommended is that they build into the oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And in addition, a spelled out 3 progressive discipline for those who don't. Let me give you an example. Marjorie Taylor Greene calling a fellow congressperson a jihadist.
Yeah.
She should be held accountable to prove her sources before she goes public and feeds the media. This is a trickle down. Trump's trickle down legacy is he trickled down the lack of truth, all facts.
Oh, yeah.
Where Reagan's trickled down.
He was a professional liar. It's how he made his living.
He was a professional liar, and he taught everybody else that they could be professional liars as well. So my point being is, if Congress doesn't get serious about this and do something about their own telling untruths and feeding the untruth market, we're never going to get our arms around this.
Yeah.
Look what they did with the Radio Frequency Act. Was it 1927 or 19?
There were 3 of them between 24 and 36, I think.
There was a lot of attempts to stop and sort of control, and out of it came the fairness doctrines that you've referenced, and so forth.
And also the prime time rule, ultimately, that came along in the 50s, as I recall.
Right.
Anyway.
All I'm saying is alt-fact bill should just hold elected officials accountable for provable. I mean, something that can be proven immediately.
Well, this should be the job of the media, Tim. And frankly, I think the media has done a pretty good job of exposing Lauren Boebert as a bigot and a fraud.
I agree, but my point being is that it's trickled. The longer the government continues to get away with it, the more.
You don't mean the government. You mean people in the government, elected officials.
People in the government. Right. Yes, correct. Individuals that are not managed. I'm a former employee relations director and HR senior executive of major corporations. I had to stop situations like this, and it can be done. That's all I can say. Thanks, Tom.
It can be done. Yeah, I'm with you. Tim, thank you very much. Accountability seems to be one of the things that is lacking, although the January 6th committee and some of the investigations by Congress give me some hope. Anyhow, we'll continue the conversation. We're going to talk about mental health in the United States and COVID and the relationship with Lynn Parramore right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at Angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.
It's another great day to make a contribution to Free Speech TV, progressive television. We are the only progressive television of any consequence in the United States. No recycled Republicans here on this network, like you will find on others who may occasionally have a progressive point of view. This is it, right here. And it exists because of your support. And you can call now, 877-378-8669. And one of the reasons why it's a really great day to support Free Speech TV is because, God bless her, Mary in Kentucky has put up a $5,000 match. Your contributions will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 by Mary in Kentucky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for supporting Free Speech TV. If you are calling today, 877-378-8669, and making your contribution. It is much needed. It keeps this network going. It's basically how Free Speech TV operates. No corporate money. It's all coming from our viewers. And, you know, there's a lot of viewers out there. We need more, of course. Please reach out to your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. You know, you could even, I've gotten correspondence from people who at the very bottom under their signature line, it just says, watch Free Speech TV on Dish or Direct, channel whatever it is, things like that. I mean, you know, there's lots of ways that you can kind of slip the message in when you're communicating with people, or if you're sending out holiday cards, you know, this time of year and that sort of thing. So, and you know, why are we supporting Free Speech TV? Because Free Speech TV is a progressive network that does embrace the progressive values that have really turned America into America over the past 100 years. I mean, just look at some of the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, 877-378-8669. What has the Democratic Party brought us? How about the women's right to vote? Woodrow Wilson oversaw that one. Social Security, that was Franklin Roosevelt. The minimum wage law, Franklin Roosevelt. Actually, the next few are FDR. The minimum wage law, unemployment insurance, the Rural Electrification Act, the FDIC bank account insurance, and the GI Bill of Rights, and the Securities and Exchange Act. That was all FDR. The Marshall Plan, that was Harry Truman, as was NATO, as was the school lunch program and the Water Quality Act of 1948. The Peace Corps came from John Kennedy, the first man on the moon. John Kennedy. The Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, LBJ. Medicare, Medicaid, LBJ. The Guaranteed Pell Student Loan Program, LBJ. Operation Head Start, LBJ. Workers' Compensation Insurance, LBJ. The Motor Voter Act, Bill Clinton. The Clinton Budget Surplus, obviously Bill Clinton. The Family and Medical Leave Act, Bill Clinton. The Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama. And then, of course, look at what Joe Biden has been doing for the last year. Some just extraordinary things, including the American Rescue Plan. And now we're working on Build Back Better. So this list of Democratic accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, who are offering you these special premiums right now. If you call now to make your contribution at 877-378-8669 or text FSTV to 44-321. $20 contribution, Free Speech TV bumper sticker. $50 contribution, Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag, or the Free Speech TV socks that were previously $100 value, but they're on sale for the holidays. A $75 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice, the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you can get an autographed copy of my newest book. Makes a great gift, by the way. The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, there is the Zoom meet and greet where we get together and kind of party together for an hour. And with a $1,000 gift, there is the come to Portland and visit us once we've all figured out this pandemic thing. You know, it might be a while, but hey, $1,000 to Free Speech TV is a big deal. It means an awful lot. So if you can, you know, feel free to get in line. And of course, those are all one-time gifts. Another way that you can support Free Speech TV is by making a regular monthly contribution, and even small regular monthly contributions. You know, we've had $5 Fridays and things like that. You know, even $5 is a big deal. 10, 20, 30, whatever you could afford. You can do both. You can make a one-time contribution and a month-by-month contribution. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. So 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV needs your help right now. It's not, you know, this network is not going to stay on the air without viewer support. And, you know, thank God for over 20 years, viewers have been supporting Free Speech TV. Well, thank you, actually, because for over 20 years, viewers like you have supported Free Speech TV, kept this network on the air, kept things going and rolling and all that sort of thing. Kept the electrons traveling to the satellites and into your home. It's not a small thing. It's really kind of a miracle when you consider it. And that miracle only exists because you or people like you have supported this television network. So if you've never called before in particular, call now, 877-378-8669, and help out Free Speech TV. This is an extraordinary network. It's the end of the year. It's a tax-deductible contribution. And, you know, it's a great organization. There's none better. So please call now. So known as the
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. One of my favorite writers is Lynn Parramore. Has just been doing brilliant writing for years, and at Lynn, LYNNPARRAMORE on Twitter. And she's got this new piece that was published over at the Institute for New Economic Thinking's website titled Warning, COVID-Fueled Mental Health Crisis Will Be a Costly Second Pandemic. And I think this is a story that really deserves all of us paying some serious attention to it. So on the line with us is the aforementioned Lynn Parramore. Lynn, welcome back to the program. It's been a long time since you've been on. I'm glad to have you back.
I'm so glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. You write, COVID has now blown the lid off a crisis building for decades. And then you ask the question, so why isn't there a plan to deal with it? What is that crisis that has been building for decades, and why don't you think there is a plan?
Yes, well, we have had a lot of cases rising of anxiety, mental health disorders. That was building for a long time, but the pandemic has sort of shined a light on just how bad it was and has gotten. I mean, just to throw some startling numbers out at you, the Lancet has reported.
This is the British Medical Journal.
That's right. The very highly regarded British Medical Journal reports that we have 53 million new cases of major depressive disorder and 76 million new cases of anxiety disorders.
In the United States?
That is globally, since the pandemic has begun. We have better monitoring systems now. The pandemic has actually allowed us to collect data more effectively and efficiently than we have before. And in the United States, a data system that the National Center for Health Statistics put out with the Census Bureau found that about half of adults between 18 and 44 were having symptoms of anxiety and depression during the pandemic. And 38% of adults living with children were experiencing those symptoms. And that's particularly concerning because in families, there's sort of a feedback loop. If the parents are depressed and anxious, the children are more likely to be, and vice versa. You know, they sort of transmit these symptoms to each other. And we're definitely finding that younger adults have been particularly vulnerable during the pandemic, as you would expect, racial and ethnic minorities, essential workers, and unpaid caregivers. That is a category that is, you know, particularly impacts women who've been hard hit with mental distress and increased substance abuse during the pandemic. And when I say there's no plan to deal with it, there's no plan to deal with it yet. There are some provisions in Build Back Better that would help, that would alleviate some of the burden of child care and give people paid leave, which is desperately needed. The United States is so out of sync with much of the world on that issue. But, you know, while we're having all of this increased symptomatology, there are many places in the United States, Texas, for example, where the stress, particularly on women, is just being compounded. Women in Texas right now are being tortured. There's really no other adequate way to describe having your body commandeered in the way that women's bodies have been dealt with in Texas. It's torture physically.
You're talking about
torture.
their ban on abortion.
Absolutely. It's women who are already struggling to take care of young children at home, to juggle work and family, are now put in this position where they may be forced to bear children against their will, which not only impacts them, it impacts the children that already may exist in the family. There are many, many studies. We know that having children that are unplanned, it contributes to poverty, not just for the family, but for entire communities. I mean, it's a kind of stress that spreads. So not only do we not really have a national plan to deal with mental stress, in many places we're making it worse.
Yeah. You also note in your article, this absolutely brilliant article, the COVID-fueled mental health crisis will be caused a second pandemic, that the coronavirus itself is neurotoxic. Explain that.
That's right. It is a virus that impacts the brain, and it's not uncommon among viruses. We knew that with the Spanish flu, there was an uptick in psychiatric cases and symptoms, and sometimes symptoms that lasted for years after the initial infection. It's similar to long COVID. So the coronavirus itself can attack the brain. We already are familiar with these symptoms of losing the sense of taste and smell. Well, that's a neurological reaction to the virus. We're also seeing psychotic symptoms. I mean, there have been psychotic symptoms reported in young people, mental health symptoms in people who never had any mental health issues. Depression, chronic fatigue, inability to think clearly. People call that brain fog. So, yes, this is a neurotoxin, and it is especially distressing for people who have those long COVID symptoms. I mean, in some cases, people have not yet recovered from the initial infection that they may have had 2 years ago. So this is all very concerning and is adding fuel to this mental health crisis.
Right, and that could be as many as a third of people who have symptomatic COVID or
yes.
severely symptomatic COVID, which is shocking.
That's right, and I think that's one reason to be cautious about Omicron. You know, we think, oh, well, maybe it doesn't cause symptoms that are as severe, but we have to remember we don't yet know about long COVID symptoms with this variant, and they very well may be a big problem, just like they've been with the other variants. So that's something
absolutely.
to keep in mind.
And then finally, you note, or I don't, maybe not finally, but you note that the social toxins are spreading. I don't think that, we generally think of things like Trump's lies or Fox News's spin as a social toxin. We might think of it as evil, but not as as if it was a disease or a poison. But you can measure the epidemiology of it, just like you could measure the epidemiology of somebody injecting lead or arsenic into the water supply of a city.
That's exactly right. And things like distrust, economic insecurity, a feeling of exploitation, inequality, economic inequality, social inequality, all of these are social toxins that impact mental health and by the same token make us more vulnerable to physical disease. One thing that I really wish we could come to in this country is an understanding that mental health is health. There's no separation between mental health and the rest of the body. If we have mental health symptoms, we're more prone to get heart disease. We're more prone to get cancer. So we need to think holistically about our health and stop this kind of mind-body separation that's, kind of a hangover from the Enlightenment.
Yeah, well, it's also built into our insurance policies. It's built into our laws with regard to things like Medicare and Medicaid and all that sort of thing. You note in the U.S., 10% of insured people make up 70% of the total spending on health care. Of that high-cost group, more than half are seeking treatment for behavioral health. Mental health spending is rising twice as fast as overall medical spending. And that's not just because of the pandemic.
That's right. This is a really sobering thing that came out of the research that I did for this article. Mental health and behavioral health conditions are extremely expensive in terms of healthcare spending. $201 billion is a figure that came out from the National Health Expenditure Accounts in 2016. That was before the pandemic. And just to give you a comparison, that's much more than heart disease. That's much more than cancer. In fact, you could take several of the major, quote unquote, physical diseases, put them together, and you wouldn't get to the spending for mental and behavioral health issues. So, and again, as I said, they're all tied together because the physical ailments contribute to those other, diseases.
So Lynn, as a result of this research that you did and this extensive research you did for this article, what, in summary, and we have a little less than a minute, what do you think as a nation we should be doing differently? Yeah,
we have got to make it the highest priority for our plans for national and global recovery. We really need the Build Back Better Act. I mean, it's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to help alleviate some of the distress with programs related to paid leave and child care, as I mentioned. And we need increased funds for mental health and substance abuse. So we really need to understand, too, that all of this begins with the birth of children. If we do not allow people to care for their infants, and that doesn't mean just mothers, that means all caregivers, and make sure that they have proper preschool care, kindergarten, all the way through, we're creating adults who are going to be susceptible to mental illness. Yeah. So it all begins, it begins from day one. It begins with family leave. Yes, absolutely. Which is in Build Back Better, as I recall. That's exactly right. Lynn Parramore, it's over at the Institute for New Economic Thinking. COVID-fueled mental health crisis will be a costly second pandemic. A brilliant article. Lynn, thanks so much for dropping by today. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure, Tom. Back at you. Thank you, Lynn. Happy holidays. You too.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour, back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stick around. And welcome back. Mike in Lomita, California. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Master Hartmann, I believe you have been unfair to... Mike, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is this better?
I think so. Go try it again.
Yeah, I just was thinking you're perhaps a bit unfair to Postmaster DeJoy, and you're saying that he was responsible for destruction of a couple hundred high-speed mail sorting machines. Right. Because I was involved with this a little bit in 2020 when the postal workers had this U.S. mail not for sale campaign, and I was out on Saturday in front of the local post office holding the sign, and on the back of it, I wrote, "End the sabotage," which got me into a couple of conversations with Trumpsters. But in any event, we knew that the total for that year alone was 671 machines.
Really?
Not a couple of hundred, yeah.
And these are machines that cost over $1 million each, and they're made, custom made for the post office. You can't just go out and buy a replacement at Best Buy's kind of thing.
Yes, and after the story broke nationally, it came to light that there was, for instance, a person in New England who had already bought one of these things who were being junked. And once the story broke, they said, "No, you can't have it." I don't know how that ever turned out.
They started destroying them so that they were unrecoverable rather than recycling them. They used to recycle them for parts.
Right. Also, there were a couple of different stories when people inquired about this. They had different excuses in different locations, so DeJoy hadn't bothered to get the story straight, in the first place.
Right.
But in any event, it was 671 2020 alone. And so I think you haven't given Mr. DeJoy his due.
Yeah. The last I heard about Mr. DeJoy and his future was that Biden was appointing a couple of new people to the Board of Postal Governors who would then have the ability to fire him. I haven't seen that happen, so I'm guessing that that's a process that takes a little more time than I had hoped. Do you have anything current on that, Mike? Are you paying attention to that?
I haven't heard anything further on it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to give Mr. DeJoy his due and note that one of the things that seems to be common to Trumpsters is that, as we all know, Trump is the patron saint of lying and liars. And people who are Trumpsters tend to be, to a large extent, I think, inclined to be phonies in the first place. And if they aren't, as we all know, you get into bed with Trump and your integrity has gone down.
Well, they also believe in the doctrine of the sacred lie. That there are some things that, it's sort of like Santa Claus. There are some things where you lie for a good reason, and the good reason outweighs the fact that it's a lie, and therefore you tell that lie. And, this is a rationale that, is as old as humanity, but it's certainly one that a lot of Trumpsters use.
Yeah, and it's our team, their team sort of a thing. But, I played on a couple of teams, and I was a team player, but I'm not going to degrade myself for any political party.
Yeah, I'm with you. Mike, thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you. It's 20 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Welcome back, 21 minutes past the hour. Over on Daily Kos, Chaplain M, a fellow who is a chaplain in a hospital in Michigan, is writing just this heartbreaking op-ed or diary. I guess they're called diaries over at Daily Kos. He writes, just a quick update because I can't bear to do much more. As a chaplain, it's in Wisconsin. As a chaplain in a hospital in a small city in northeast Wisconsin, I find more daily heartbreak now than even in the previous months of the pandemic. The numbers are at least as high in our ICU and our general COVID unit. The difference is the ages of the people who are dying and those who are closest to them. And by the way, this is what we're seeing with the Delta variant and with the Omicron variant, is that they are hitting young people. COVID is no longer a disease. It's no longer the boomer remover. It's no longer a disease that attacks old people largely or even exclusively. He goes on to say, last month we saw many people in their 40s dying, young adults in their late teens and 20s were their children, and seeing them try to figure out how to mourn was heart-wrenching. He said this month seems to be bringing us the death of patients in their 30s. A couple of nights ago, a woman of 39 with two kids, ages 5 and 9, and a devastated husband. She died. My colleague who responded after midnight when she took a nosedive gave the kids prayer blankets and helped them gather up the drawings they made for their mom, which were taped up on the walls of her room. She was never aware of them in the last 10 to 14 days of her life, though, because she was intubated, sedated, and paralyzed with medications. He offered the prayers her husband and family requested and went home to try to rest, but that was interrupted a few hours later by a call from our sister hospital where there were more deaths. Now I am watching the pain of a family whose beloved husband and son is only 34 years old and isn't going to live much longer, and that of a 31-year-old woman patient with 3 little kids and a very broken husband, parents, and best friend, keeping vigil as we allow them in one at a time to spend time with the beloved one, wearing proper PPE, of course. It feels like a little taste of hell for them, I know, as well as for the poor, exhausted nurses and respiratory therapists. It feels like this will never end. I've loved working part-time, but I don't know if I'm up to the task of doing this for the long term. I don't know how our care team does it, with the physically challenging care, overtime, lack of breaks, and constant loss. Please hope and pray for an end to this horror show. We are wrecking our healthcare staff, and it doesn't have to happen. That's the hardest part, knowing that had these folks just chosen vaccination, their children would not be motherless and their young spouses would not be widowed. The world has gone wrong and sorrow is everywhere. You see, the chaplain writes, I'm fortunate that I only work 3 days a week, but it's still more than I can bear sometimes, like today. A heartbreaking diary over at Daily Kos, and a really troubling one. And to that, apropos of that, I also wanted to share with you this piece from the Straits Times. This is a newspaper out of Hong Kong, and it's about Singapore. And Singapore, I may have mentioned this yesterday. I don't recall if I mentioned it on the air, if I just was telling Sean and Nate about it. But in Singapore, if you show up now in the hospital anytime after December 8th, which was yesterday, if you show up in a hospital with COVID and you need treatment and you have not been vaccinated, if you've chosen not to be vaccinated and you don't have a solid medical reason not to be vaccinated, you have to pay your own hospital bill out of pocket. And they're saying that the average is around $25,000. They have a national healthcare system, so healthcare is much less expensive in Singapore than here in the United States, but still, $25,000 out of pocket. The government says this is their position. They say in the midst of a pandemic that has killed so many people, choosing not to be vaccinated against COVID-19 when there are safe and effective vaccines has major implications for the health of others, especially vulnerable people who may not be able to get the vaccine themselves. Thus, there is an argument from a human rights perspective, says the government of Singapore, from a human rights perspective, for the freedom from harm caused by others, an equivalent argument for why it is illegal to drink and drive. And this is the argument I've been making here in the United States, that the op-ed that I published a week or two ago, saying that it's time for us to simply mandate vaccines and say if you don't want to get vaccinated, you don't get to play. No more theater, no more restaurants, no more bars, no more shopping. You can stay at home and order from Amazon if you want, but if you don't want to get vaccinated, you are on house arrest essentially, because you're killing other people as well as yourself and your family. I mean, this is well over 90% of all the people in the hospitals and well over 95% of all the people all across the United States who are dying in our hospitals from COVID are unvaccinated. People in red counties that voted for Donald Trump in the last election, are 6 times, 600% more likely to die from COVID than people in blue counties that voted for Joe Biden. Why is that? Because people in blue counties are vaccinated and people in red counties are listening to Fox so-called news and Donald Trump and idiots, former sportscaster, podcaster people, and believing that somehow ivermectin is going to save them and they don't need to be vaccinated. It is crazy. What do you think about all this? How do you think we should be dealing with this? I'll pick up your calls right after this break.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person? And we dare to say, no, not a chance. Come on, Supreme Court. It's another great day to make a contribution to Free Speech TV, progressive television. We are the only progressive television of any consequence in the United States. No recycled Republicans here on this network, like you will find on others who may occasionally have a progressive point of view. This is it, right here. And it exists because of your support. And you can call now, 877-378-8669. And one of the reasons why it's a really great day to support Free Speech TV is because, God bless her, Mary in Kentucky has put up a $5,000 match. Your contributions will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 by Mary in Kentucky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for supporting Free Speech TV. If you are calling today, 877-378-8669, and making your contribution, it is much needed. It keeps this network going. It's basically how Free Speech TV operates. No corporate money. It's all coming from our viewers. And, you know, there's a lot of viewers out there. We need more, of course. Please reach out to your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. You know, you could even, I've gotten correspondence from people who at the very bottom under their signature line, it just says, watch Free Speech TV on Dish or Direct, channel, whatever it is, things like that. I mean, you know, there's lots of ways that you can kind of slip the message in when you're communicating with people, or if you're sending out holiday cards, you know, this time of year and that sort of thing. So, and you know, why are we supporting Free Speech TV? Because Free Speech TV is a progressive network that does embrace the progressive values that have really turned America into America over the past 100 years. I mean, just look at some of the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, 877-378-8669. What has the Democratic Party brought us? How about the women's right to vote? Woodrow Wilson oversaw that one. Social Security, that was Franklin Roosevelt. The minimum wage law, Franklin Roosevelt. Actually, the next few are FDR. The minimum wage law, unemployment insurance, the Rural Electrification Act, the FDIC bank account insurance, and the GI Bill of Rights, and the Securities and Exchange Act. That was all FDR. The Marshall Plan, that was Harry Truman, as was NATO, as was the school lunch program and the Water Quality Act of 1948. The Peace Corps came from John Kennedy, the first man on the moon, John Kennedy. The Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, LBJ, Medicare, Medicaid, LBJ, the Guaranteed Pell Student Loan Program, LBJ, Operation Head Start, LBJ, Workers' Compensation Insurance, LBJ, the Motor Voter Act, Bill Clinton, the Clinton Budget Surplus, obviously Bill Clinton, the Family and Medical Leave Act, Bill Clinton, the Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama. And then, of course, look at what Joe Biden has been doing for the last year. Some just extraordinary things, including the American Rescue Plan, and now we're working on Build Back Better. So this list of Democratic accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, who are offering you these special premiums right now. If you call now to make your contribution at 877-378-8669 or text FSTV to 44-321, $20 contribution, Free Speech TV bumper sticker. $50 contribution, Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag, or the Free Speech TV socks that were previously a $100 value, but they're on sale for the holidays. A $75 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice, the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you can get an autographed copy of my newest book. Makes a great gift, by the way. The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity T-shirt. With a $240 gift, there is the Zoom meet and greet where we get together and kind of party together for an hour. And with a $1,000 gift, there is the come to Portland and visit us once we've all figured out this pandemic thing. You know, it might be a while, but hey, $1,000 to Free Speech TV is a big deal. It means an awful lot. So if you can, you know, feel free to get in line. And of course, those are all one-time gifts. Another way that you can support Free Speech TV is by making a regular monthly contribution, and even small regular monthly contributions. You know, we've had $5 Fridays and things like that. You know, even $5 is a big deal. 10, 20, 30, whatever you could afford. You can do both. You can make a one-time contribution and a month-by-month contribution. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. So 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV needs your help right now. It's not, this network is not going to stay on the air without viewer support. And, thank God for over 20 years, viewers have been supporting Free Speech TV. Well, thank you, actually, because for over 20 years, viewers like you have supported Free Speech TV, kept this network on the air, kept things going and rolling and all that sort of thing, kept the electrons traveling to the satellites and into your home. It's not a small thing. It's really kind of a miracle when you consider it. And that miracle only exists because you or people like you have supported this television network. So if you've never called before in particular, call now, 877-378-8669, and help out Free Speech TV. This is an extraordinary network. It's the end of the year. It's a tax-deductible contribution, and it's a great organization. There's none better. So please call now.
Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program.
So there's this group in Stockholm, Sweden. It's called the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. They are, world famous. Every year they release, or periodically, they release a report called The Global State of Democracy. And they just released their 2021 version of this. And in this, they point out that the world is becoming more authoritarian, I'm quoting from their report, as non-democratic regimes become even more brazen in their repression, and many democratic governments suffer from backsliding by adopting their tactics of restricting free speech and weakening the rule of law. Now, who is backsliding? They go on to say the United States is backsliding. The bastion of global democracy, the United States, fell victim to authoritarian tendencies itself and was knocked down a significant number of steps on the democratic scale. We are a backsliding nation. There's a whole video about this over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Picking up your phone calls. John in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for taking my call because I started feeling depressed yesterday, and your guest speaker you had on the phone was perfect to you. So I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, first of all, my parents live in Paris, and my wife and I 6 months ago decided we were going to go spend Christmas and visit them because the numbers are going down. Well, obviously, everything took a twist. So we canceled our flight yesterday, and that's when I felt very depressed because I had to cancel my flight not because of me and my wife not being responsible. We're triple vaccinated and we wear a mask everywhere. I had to cancel my flight because of the anti-vaxxers. They're the ones that ruined my trip for me. And I am so angry that the people who are being vaccinated and wearing masks and doing our share to end this pandemic, we're being punished. And the non-vaccinated people, they're just living life like nothing's never happened, and it makes me so talk. And then another thing too,
well, they're not just living life, John. They're flooding our hospitals to the point where you know surgeries are being postponed. People are showing up with heart attacks and things that aren't getting treated. People are discovering things that might be cancer, and they're not being able to get the kind of examinations necessary, MRIs and things like that. I mean, the hospitals are just clogged with these people.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I have a first cousin. She's a physician in Denver. So I canceled my international flight, and I got a refund on that because they're the one that were sending me travel warnings. But I called Southwest Airlines because we had to take a flight we were going to fly Phoenix to L.A. to catch our international flight. And Southwest goes, oh, we're not going to give you a refund. We're going to give you a voucher. We no longer honor the pandemic. And I'm like, well, you know what? Your CEO is a piece of crap. And she got mad at me. And I said, well, don't get mad at me. You just told me that you guys don't honor COVID, and I'm not canceling my flight to L.A. because I don't want to go surfing. This is an international flight. My point, Tom, is just the CEOs alone, other than United for domestic carriers, just the CEOs alone, if they would make a mandate where you have to be vaccinated to get on an airplane, we would probably reach herd immunity. I don't understand why judges could be on the bench and they're trying to block Biden's vaccine. I mean,
They're Trump-appointed judges, John. The whole Republican strategy right now is keep the pandemic going, keep people dying, keep the hospitals clogged up, keep people afraid to go shopping, keep them out of restaurants. That will depress the economy, and a depressed economy works to the disadvantage of the party in power. And right now, Democrats control the White House, the House, and the Senate, and therefore, if they can make this economy go in the tank, and they're doing absolutely everything they can to make that happen, including the budget resolution yesterday that all the Republicans voted for that would have slashed Medicare. Every Republican voted yesterday to slash Medicare. And, thankfully, the Democrats defeated that provision in the House of Representatives. But, I mean, their strategy is just chaos, 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 and disrupt things and make it terrible so people will blame Democrats for this. And then, we'll have a chance in the election in 2022 and 2024. It's craven.
Yeah, Tom. And, one thing I want to say is, the funny part about all that is the Republican Party, they're killing their own base.
I know, but the math that they're doing
they don't see it like that.
It's only about a 1% death rate for people who get this virus, and so if they lose 1 out of 100 voters, they can put up with that.
They don't care.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear. They don't care. Tucker Carlson doesn't care. Fox News doesn't care. Right-wing media doesn't care. So people are dying. That's the cost. I mean, people die in wars, right? People die all the time. It's really tragic. It's really truly tragic.
Can I please say one more thing, and I'd like to get your opinion? I have a lot of family members that are frontline workers, along with a lot of people. And the frontline workers, I'm so angry that they're putting their lives in danger for all of this. But here's the catch-22. We all have to remember it's all about the money. Follow the money. CEOs of hospitals, they love COVID because they're making bank. And they're not in danger because they're not
actually.
A frontline worker.
They're not. COVID is not that profitable, and also because the hospitals are overrun with COVID, all the other things that can make bank for them. People coming in for spinal surgery, or people coming in for cancer surgery, or people coming in for plastic surgery. Whatever it may be, all that stuff is on hold. So the really profitable stuff in the hospitals is down right now. So no, this isn't about
Tom,
the money,
thank
John.
You so much. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying that. That's why I listen to you, because you're my teacher.
Okay.
Anyway, Tom, my whole the whole thing is, you know what? If we would get vaccinated and reach herd immunity, the virus would be dead because it could no longer mutate.
Yes, and that's why we need to vaccinate not only all of America, but all of the world. John, thank you. Thank you very much for the call. David in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, David, what's up?
Yeah, hey, I'm calling from the Detroit area. There are a few things. One, it just seems like on the left, we're not mobilizing well enough on the local level. I'm not seeing enough involvement in local politics, school boards, community boards, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're always looking for...
Well, what's happening, actually, it's the other way around. It's that the right is using the issues of race and gender identity as as a lever to get their homophobic, racist people into the party and into the school boards and into these local situations. And on the Democratic side, there's not an outrage. There's not an anger, although I think there will be once we see how these Republicans perform in these positions.
Well, we've got someone over in New Hampshire right now trying to pass a bill, trying to promote a bill to prevent teaching of American history that doesn't make America look good.
Right. And it's not just New Hampshire, by the way.
I'm sorry, what now?
It's not just in New Hampshire. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's like, and then the way the right recontextualizes things. I was speaking about this bill on another show, and the person lied. The show host lied to his listeners, cut off the conversation, and his attitude was, "Well, did they pass the bill yet?" And my response is, and this is for the listeners, we should not wait until it's too late to be outraged.
Right. They have passed the bill in Texas. I mean, they have passed bills like that in about a dozen states now, and maybe a few more, where you've got teachers who are afraid to teach American history right now, the actual history of the United States. They're afraid to teach that the South seceded because they wanted to defend slavery. They're afraid to teach that, half the people at the Constitutional Convention were slaveholders. They're afraid to teach.
What do you suggest? Yeah, what do you suggest for people in those states? How do these people...
I think this is going to play out, David, the same way that creationism did. You may not be old enough to remember these debates back in the 70s. But there was this whole right-wing uproar. This was when the moral majority was just starting to feel its oats, and the white evangelical movement was becoming a political movement that was grounded in white power and religion. And they wanted the end of the teaching of evolution in our schools and the end of the teaching of sex education in our schools. And it was a big deal. We ultimately played through it. They had their day for a few years, and they had their and then everybody just kind of looked at them and said, "You guys are friggin' nuts."
So you think this is going to just burn itself out?
I do.
I just want to make one more small comment. It was related to the mental health issue that you had the guest on about. I just want to remind callers, iron deficiency at early ages can lead to a lot of these psychological symptoms, especially in the African American community. It's 3 times more prevalent. So it's very important that obviously you have to talk to a doctor about it, but make sure that children are getting the right amount of iron, because an iron deficiency can be that's like the silent one that sneaks by, and for years you don't even know it. And I
am no expert on that, David, but I do agree with you that making sure that all of our children have good nutrition and keeping the junk food out of their diets and making sure that they've got lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts and grains and things like that. Good stuff, and you'll get plenty of iron if you're eating that way. And also, if you're going to supplement, vitamin D is the one that, particularly if you live in the north, that you need to supplement. David, thank you for the call. It is coming up on 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the place where despair is not an option. No, we are not going to be paralyzed. We are going to remain active. And welcome back to your radio activist show. Maybe it's not that funny. Anyhow, picking up your phone calls. Joel in Joliet, Illinois. Hey, Joel, what's up?
Tom, how are you?
Good.
Hey, your last minutes ago, you ranted about COVID. You were spot on again, but people just kind of lose sight of that in day to day. And, like you said, it's discord to sink Biden. Now, if the GOP wins in 22, their crafty wordsmiths will twist, and they'll twist it to go to a pro-vaccine because they don't want to assume and be labeled with a train wreck. So if they win in 22, guarantee it for all listeners, keep your eyes and ears open, they're going to change their tune, and they're going to go pro-vaccine. Just like the great idea.
Biden will still be in the White House. I think you're absolutely right if it's 2024, but I'm skeptical about 2022.
Yes, correct. And you walk up to a store and it has no shirt, no service. Well, what about no vax, no health care going into the hospital because they're clogging up our health care? People have to. Well,
this is what Singapore is doing. If you come into the hospital in Singapore with COVID, you gotta write a damn check.
Right. I think it's a great idea. And like I mentioned before, people where's the outrage? Here it comes down to it. The GOP eats red meat. The Democrats nibble on pasture grasses. It's not in our DNA to be aggressive and to basically get a fire up our ass. It's not in our DNA to do that. But we need to because we're going to get spanked really hard.
Yeah. I think that there's something about the authoritarian personality, and we should probably get John Dean back on about this if he's ever available. There's something about the authoritarian personality that also binds folks like that to violence. And, authoritarianism and violence almost always seem to go hand in hand. And I know that there's been speculation throughout the years that has to do with being spanked as a child or being, physically beaten as a child. I think there's also a temperament issue. But generally speaking, I think it's an interesting analysis, Joel, that, Republicans are okay with violence. Democrats would rather just, we all get along. George Lakoff, the linguist and professor at University of California at Berkeley, says that we have different worldviews, that the conservative worldview is that society is and should be organized under the strict father model, of the family, that we all view politics as family, but it's the strict father. And so you need a father or an authority figure who tells you what is right, what is wrong, and enforces that. Whereas the Democrats are the nurturing family model, which is where everybody in the family bears some responsibility for the whole family, and no one person completely dominates it, and people collaborate on making things better. And I think it's a pretty accurate analysis. I don't know why individuals fall into one of those two categories, but I do think this whole idea of the authoritarian personality as a type of temperament, maybe even people being born that way as much as being, raised that way, is important. But Joel, thanks a lot. You raise a lot of thought-provoking points there. And thanks for watching us on Facebook too. We'll be back. It's 49 minutes past the hour. Just stick around. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. So Sweden had this epidemiologist guy, not a physician, who was in charge for a while of their response to COVID. They've put together a commission to look into, what screwed up so badly. Why did so many Swedes die? In Brazil, they've got the second worst rate of COVID infection and deaths in the world behind us. And their Senate put together a 1,000-plus page report basically saying that President Jair Bolsonaro should be tried for mass murder and crimes against humanity. Here in the United States, we've got this massive death toll, the worst in the world, certainly one of the worst in the developed world anyway. And we're doing basically nothing about it. We're not looking into it. Can you imagine if when Barack Obama was president, 700,000 Americans died? I mean, keep in mind, 4 Americans died at Benghazi, dozens of congressional hearings, 11 hours of testimony from Hillary Clinton. We've got a video about all this over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Picking up your calls, Bruce in Chicago. Hey, Bruce, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for being the voice of reason.
We're trying.
I tried to give a quick explanation, but I'm going to try and do it with you to your screener. I want to make February 14th unofficial National Anti-Journalism Day. That was the day that WTVT Tampa went to court to actually it was an appeals court because they lost in the lower court to Wilson and Aker, who were the reporters who refused
Steve
to...
Wilson and Jane Aker, yeah. This was the Monsanto RGBH case.
I didn't know if it was Monsanto or ConAgra, but yeah.
It was Monsanto.
They refused to do this. And now, if anybody ever listens to Fox News, because this is a TV channel, this is not a cable channel.
Right.
This is a regular FCC controlled. And of course, it was Bush in his administration in 2003, and they didn't do anything about it. And the way they won on appeal was that the corporate lawyers said that it was their right under the First Amendment for freedom of speech to lie.
Yeah, just for people who don't know what we're talking about, Bruce, let me just set this up a little bit. Back in the day, this is in 2002 or 2003, Jane Aker and Steve, what was his last name? Wilson?
Wilson.
Yeah, Steve Wilson, were 2 reporters for a TV station owned by Fox. And they went out and this was down in Florida, and one of the things that was becoming very contentious was this recombinant bovine growth hormone, RGBH. And it was a synthetically made hormone that made cows gain weight. And the concern was that it was making its way into the milk was making its way into little kids or everybody else, and that this stuff might cause people to grow in ways unusual to how they should, or even cause cancer cells to grow. Nobody really knew for certain. But there was a lot of troubling evidence that this wasn't a good thing to have in our food supply. And they did a report on this, and the TV station said, no, redo it and change this or that. They redid it over 20 times, and to the point where it went from a, look out, to an advertisement for Monsanto, essentially. And at that point, Jane and Steve said, screw. In fact, they've been on this program discussing this. This was over a decade ago. I had them on this show about it. And they said, we're going to pull the story. We refuse to stand behind this story any longer. And they got fired. And so they sued for unlawful dismissal, for inappropriate termination, and they won a $500,000 settlement in the lower court, where a jury of 6 peers, six of their peers, found Fox guilty of illegally terminating their employment because they refused to lie on the air. Fox then appealed this to the appeals court, and the appeals court said no. Under the First Amendment, the Fox television station has an absolute right to lie to its viewers, and Jane and Steve are still terminated, and they don't get their $500,000. And that's where it ended. And so back to you, Bruce.
Anybody who listens to Fox News and they talk to me about it, I tell them that February 14th, 2003 is the unofficial anti-journalism day.
Yeah. Well, Fox, when I don't recall who it was, but somebody tried suing Tucker Carlson, as I recall, and Fox's defense in court was, we don't have to offer actual facts or news, and in fact, people don't expect that when they come to Fox. They're looking for opinion.
Cable.
They're looking for red meat. So
he's on cable. This is WTVT Tampa is a regular station,
right?
That has a license with the FCC. They're supposed to provide public.
I know, but that was not the issue. The issue was an illegal termination. But it's an amazing story. Bruce, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It was a good one. Mark in San Francisco. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Well, basically, I think the Democrats need to focus on democracy as the issue on the next election, and that should be to the forefront now. Forget everything else. Democracy is under attack, and the Democrats need to scream about it. If they want to get people out to the polls, they better tell the American people what the Republican Party is doing.
Yeah.
And the only way they can do that is bring it to the forefront.
Well, look at what Biden's doing today and tomorrow with his democracy conference. I mean, he's got 100 countries around the world. Hungary, by the way, not invited. Hungary now the new, love object of the hard right. Tucker Carlson doing his show from Hungary for a week, and CPAC now doing their conference in Hungary next year. But they were not invited because they're not a democracy anymore. It's an autocracy. But trying to get the democracies around the world together and to stand up to this kind of stuff.
Well, Tom, the problem is that with democracy not being on the forefront by the Democrats saying that we're under attack, they're basically letting the Republicans take polls saying that inflation is the number one issue. The number one issue is democracy.
It should be.
That's the number one issue.
I agree. Our democracy is explicitly and unambiguously under attack. I would argue it has been for 40 years now, but what you're seeing right now is not something that you could just lay at the feet of Donald Trump, and it didn't just appear out of nowhere. This started in the 1970s. This really began with the Powell Memo in 1971, Lewis Powell being put on the Supreme Court in 72 by Richard Nixon. I would say I could even argue that it started in 1968 when Richard Nixon sabotaged the U.S. efforts to have peace with Vietnam just so that he could be Hubert Humphrey in the election of 68. He committed treason, as we have so frequently heard that clip from Lyndon Johnson. Mark, thank you. Thanks for pulling that out of the memory hole, too. Boy, 2 in a row. We'll be back. I want to share with you this disturbing, speaking of politics, this disturbing conclusion scientists are coming to about the United States.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at Angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.
It's another great day to make a contribution to Free Speech TV, progressive television. We are the only progressive television of any consequence in the United States. No recycled Republicans here on this network, like you will find on others who may occasionally have a progressive point of view. This is it, right here. And it exists because of your support. And you can call now, 877-378-8669. And one of the reasons why it's a really great day to support Free Speech TV is because, God bless her, Mary in Kentucky has put up a $5,000 match. Your contributions will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 by Mary in Kentucky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for supporting Free Speech TV. If you are calling today, 877-378-8669, and making your contribution, it is much needed. It keeps this network going. It's basically how Free Speech TV operates. No corporate money. It's all coming from our viewers. And, you know, there's a lot of viewers out there. We need more, of course. Please reach out to your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. You know, you could even, I've gotten correspondence from people who at the very bottom under their signature line, it just says, watch Free Speech TV on Dish or Direct, channel, whatever it is, things like that. I mean, you know, there's lots of ways that you can kind of slip the message in when you're communicating with people, or if you're sending out holiday cards, you know, this time of year and that sort of thing. So, and you know, why are we supporting Free Speech TV? Because Free Speech TV is a progressive network that does embrace the progressive values that have really turned America into America over the past 100 years. I mean, just look at some of the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, 877-378-8669. What has the Democratic Party brought us? How about the women's right to vote? Woodrow Wilson oversaw that one. Social Security, that was Franklin Roosevelt. The minimum wage law, Franklin Roosevelt. Actually, the next few are FDR. The minimum wage law, unemployment insurance, the Rural Electrification Act, the FDIC bank account insurance, and the GI Bill of Rights, and the Securities and Exchange Act. That was all FDR. The Marshall Plan, that was Harry Truman, as was NATO, as was the school lunch program and the Water Quality Act of 1948. The Peace Corps came from John Kennedy, the first man on the moon. John Kennedy. The Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, LBJ. Medicare, Medicaid, LBJ. The Guaranteed Pell Student Loan Program, LBJ. Operation Head Start, LBJ. Workers' Compensation Insurance, LBJ. The Motor Voter Act, Bill Clinton. The Clinton budget surplus, obviously Bill Clinton. The Family and Medical Leave Act, Bill Clinton. The Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama. And then, of course, look at what Joe Biden has been doing for the last year. Some just extraordinary things, including the American Rescue Plan and now we're working on Build Back Better. So this list of Democratic accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, who are offering you these special premiums right now. If you call now to make your contribution at 877-378-8669 or text FSTV to 44-321. $20 contribution, Free Speech TV bumper sticker. $50 contribution, Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag, or the Free Speech TV socks that were previously $100 value, but they're on sale for the holidays. A $75 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice, the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you can get an autographed copy of my newest book. Makes a great gift, by the way. The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, there is the Zoom meet and greet where we get together and kind of party together for an hour. And with a $1,000 gift, there is the come to Portland and visit us once we've all figured out this pandemic thing. You know, it might be a while, but hey, $1,000 to Free Speech TV is a big deal. It means an awful lot. So if you can, you know, feel free to get in line. And of course, those are all one-time gifts. Another way that you can support Free Speech TV is by making a regular monthly contribution, and even small regular monthly contributions. You know, we've had $5 Fridays and things like that. You know, even $5 is a big deal. 10, 20, 30, whatever you could afford. You can do both. You can make a one-time contribution and a month-by-month contribution. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. So 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV needs your help right now. It's not, you know, this network is not going to stay on the air without viewer support. And, you know, thank God for over 20 years, viewers have been supporting Free Speech TV. Well, thank you, actually, because for over 20 years, viewers like you have supported Free Speech TV, kept this network on the air, kept things going and rolling and all that sort of thing, kept the electrons traveling to the satellites and into your home. It's not a small thing. It's really kind of a miracle when you consider it. And that miracle only exists because you or people like you have supported this television network. So if you've never called before in particular, call now, 877-378-8669, and help out Free Speech TV. This is an extraordinary network. It's the end of the year. It's a tax-deductible contribution. And, you know, it's a great organization. There's none better. So please call now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. By the way, the FDA just approved boosters, the Pfizer booster, for 16 and 17-year-olds. So it used to be if you were over 18, it is now a 3-shot regimen. Now if you're over 16 or 16 or over, it's a 3-shot regimen. So if you have 16 or 17-year-old kids in your family, get them, and it's been more than 6 months since they got their second shot. Get them a booster here. I wanted to share with you a story by Nicole Carlos that was published over at Salon. It's titled, "Scientists Just Came to a Disturbing Conclusion About the Political Divide in the United States." And I think that this is actually a much bigger issue than even this study came to, and I'll get to that in just a moment. What they're pointing out is that America has become increasingly polarized over the last 40 years or thereabouts. And it's largely been driven not by the left moving farther to the left, right? We're not even back to where we were in 1966 when we got Medicare, passed or 65 with the Voting Rights Act, or 64 with the Civil Rights Act. We have been instead moving farther and farther and farther to the right, year after year after year. And not only as a nation, but within the political sphere, those on the right have been moving so far to the right that many of them now are literally in the fascist part of the right-wing spectrum. So this model was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Scientists. And what they noted, here's a quote from it. We see this very disturbing pattern in which a shock brings people together a little bit closer initially. Now, what they're talking about is, like, for example, think of World War II, right? We got hit with Pearl Harbor. The whole country pulled together. Now, that was a time when Republicans didn't have a lot of power and Democrats ran the country by and large, all across the country. Franklin Roosevelt was president. The New Deal was very popular. We were doing all these socialist things like Social Security and minimum wage and whatnot. And the country just pulled together, Republicans as well as Democrats. I realized that the America First movement, which preceded December 7, 1941, from the mid-30s right up until 1941, with Lucky Lindbergh and all that kind of stuff, that they were opposed to our fighting Hitler. We had a pro-Hitler movement in the United States. In fact, the German-American Bund had, meetings in Madison Square Garden, thousands of guys with Nazis, swastikas, doing the Nazi salute and everything back in the day. But when we got hit on Pearl Harbor, we pulled together. And those voices were just basically silenced. We saw something very similar to that on 9/11. On 9/11, when the United States was attacked, we had Republicans in charge. George W. Bush was president, and Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, as I recall. And the consequence of that was that Democrats came to the Republicans' side and said, we're not going to turn this into a partisan issue. We are all Americans, and we have all been attacked. And, of course, this was at a time, when George W. Bush was seen as an illegitimate president because the Supreme Court had handed the White House to him after his brother down in Florida had rigged the vote. And pretty much everybody knew it. It was common knowledge in 2001 when 9/11 happened. But nonetheless, the Democrats said, we're with you, George. I mean, to the point of going to war with Iraq and Afghanistan, sadly. But that's an example of coming together. But anyhow, back to this study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They say shock brings people a little bit closer initially, but if polarization is too extreme, eventually the effects of a shared fate, like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, and I would say in this case the pandemic, eventually the effects of a shared fate are swamped by the existing divisions and people become divided even on the shock issue, which is exactly what has happened with COVID. The Republicans turned COVID into a political issue. They politicized a virus, and they continue to use it to try to tear America apart, to the point where you've got like Governor Stitt, of what is it, Montana, I think. Saying to his National Guard people, "Oh, you don't have to worry about getting vaccinated. Everything will be," and now they're in deep trouble. Kristi Noem bragging about bringing hundreds of thousands of COVID-infected people to South Dakota, and having South Dakota then thereafter, for the next month or so, having one of the highest death rates in America. This is a badge of honor for Kristi Noem, that as governor, she probably killed more people per capita than any other governor in the United States, although I think that Ron DeSantis is giving her a good run for his money, or for her money. But they note in this piece, they say, if we reach that point, we cannot unite even in the face of war, climate change, pandemics, or other challenges to the survival of our society. And what I would like to point out is that this is not something that has just recently happened and didn't come about just because Donald Trump was president and he was a professional liar. He spent his whole career being a liar, lying about his taxes, lying about what his properties were worth to get his taxes down, lying to people who wanted to buy condos, lying about his various products, lying about his school. He got actually successfully prosecuted for that one. Lying about his nonprofit. He got successfully prosecuted for that one, too. All three of his kids had to go to class to learn how to be ethical, stewards of a nonprofit. But I would submit to you that this was not just Donald Trump. That what happened was in the 1970s, actually, I think we can take this back to 1954. The Brown v. Board decision, and sadly, so much in this country goes back to race. In 1954, the Brown v. Board decision said segregated schools are no longer legal in the United States. The right wing, the same right-wing people who in the 30s, leading up to 1941, had been saying, Hitler's an okay guy and we can work with him. Those same people started saying, oh my God, the Supreme Court has been taken over by communists. Earl Warren, Dwight Eisenhower's appointee to the Supreme Court, is a communist, and we need to impeach him for saying that our little white children have to go to school with black children. I mean, that was the issue. And that permeated our politics increasingly, and you had right-wing billionaires jump into this. Fred Koch supporting the John Birch Society. The John Birch Society was all about this. The communists in the State Department, John Stormer, none dare call it treason. Leading up to the 1960s, where Richard Nixon was carrying this banner and felt that, he was so right. It was so important to fight this socialism, this creeping socialism, that he was willing to commit treason against the United States of America and tell the South Vietnamese, don't cut a deal with Lynn and Johnson to have peace in Vietnam. And as a consequence of that treason that Richard Nixon committed in 1968, another 20,000 plus Americans and another million plus Vietnamese died. Can you imagine the blood that man has on his soul? And then Reagan came along and said, oh yeah, well, same deal. We'll cut a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages to destroy the Jimmy Carter presidency. But what was happening throughout this entire time was this right-wing group of billionaires and foundations, family foundations, were pouring money into these right-wing think tanks that were churning out right-wing propaganda, and they were polarizing America in a way that on the left, people were still saying, oh yeah, well, however the election turns out, that's how it turns out, and we can all work together. Yes, we may disagree on politics, but we're all brothers and sisters here. On the right, they were saying a very different message, starting explicitly in the 1980s, saying that, Ronald Reagan, for example, when the AIDS crisis happened, saying, well, gay people aren't really part of America. We're not going to do anything about that. They're getting what they deserve, was basically the message of the Reagan administration with regard to HIV/AIDS. And then that got, amplified and then George W. Bush becomes president, 9/11 happens, and the Democrats, the left, said, okay, we will join you. But I am guessing if Al Gore had been president, it might not have played out that way. Because I think we were already at that point in 2001. But Al Gore wasn't president. So here now we have a Democrat president, Joe Biden, during a pandemic with now a new variant coming along, promising to make things even worse. And the right is promoting an ideology, a theory, a meme that is causing more and more Americans to die every day. I mean, the death numbers are going up. Our count over at TrumpDeathToll.org is for today, brought to you by the Hartmann Report, by the way. TrumpDeathToll.org is 793,228. It's amazing. And I think this is because the Republican Party has ceased to be an American political party in the sense of like America. I was going to say America first, but echoes of the old neo-Nazi movement. But a party that puts the well-being of America first. They have ceased to be that, and I would argue that they ceased to be that definitely in 1981 and arguably in 1968. And the Republican Party has become just about power and wealth for the top 1%, period. This is their only priority. And they don't care how many people die in order to hold power to maintain that. And that's why, what these scientists, they're saying, oh my God, look at this. I mean, like I said, it's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And they're concerned that this might be an end point for America. Because the right has become so heavily polarized that they're literally not willing to work with the left for the good of the country. So how does this play out? What do we do with this? In my opinion, the way it's going to play out is one of two ways. Either the right seizes power, in which case they're going to continue doing everything they can to destroy democracy, the left, and any semblance of a free and open media and society in the United States. We're going to become like Hungary. Or they're going to be marginalized and we're going to see through what they're doing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And the next 3 years are the key to the whole thing, which is why it's so important that you and I keep talking about this stuff and keep waking people up. And welcome back. Rob in Waconia, Minnesota. Hey, Rob, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to call and correct you on something you said a little earlier. It's not a real big deal. You said that every Republican voted against the Protecting Medicare and American Farmers from Sequester Cuts Act.
Yeah, apparently there was one. Actually, go ahead.
One Republican, Adam Kinzinger, voted with the Democrats.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm looking at the graphic over at the top of Democratic Underground, and you're right. It says every House Republican but one. And thank you for letting me know it was Kinzinger. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. He's turning into a reasonable person now that he's not running for re-election, and now that he's been disowned by his own party.
Yeah, I was posting it on my Facebook page, and I wanted to have an article to go along with it. And I found this article, and I was like, Tom was off by one.
Yes, I was, Rob. Thank you for correcting that. I truly appreciate it. And,
certainly. No trouble at all.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call. Good talking to you. Paul in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Talking about the increase in the infections and the hospitalizations due to the Delta variant, the Omicron hasn't really suck its hooks into.
Yeah, it's popped up in 22 states so far, but it still is peripheral. Yes.
Yeah. The real problem is the Delta variant, and the people. I think everyone who watches the news, and I'm going to refer to the national network news, because you really you get to see a broad perspective of our country in aggregate. It's just loaded with people, 90% plus, all unvaccinated, and even in areas where many people, or very high percentages of people, like in New England, Massachusetts and states like that, New Hampshire, I think, they have like 80%. They're very, very high penetration of the vaccine into the overall population, and even their hospitals are being inundated. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and then they were trying to compare, what's going on elsewhere in the world, and in China, they're dealing with it too. But
China has had a total of 5,000 deaths from COVID.
Exactly.
We have had 700,000.
They make a pejorative comment. Well, the Chinese vaccine isn't as good as our vaccine, and I'm thinking yeah, but
no, it's not about the vaccine, Paul. It's about the fact that China locked down the coronavirus. They locked down their entire country. When they, one of the reasons why we've got a supply chain problem here in the United States is that two of their major ports, the two largest ports, they shut down for a full 2 months because a couple of COVID cases popped up on shippers.
But even if you do that, Tom, without the vaccine, you can't function. I mean, they can't stay locked down forever.
Yeah.
China has distributed over 2.5 billion shots. Basically, they have near 100% compliance. Now they bring,
and they're doing it with children all the way down to the age of 3, by the way, in China.
Yeah, the whole population has to be covered, and if you don't do that, it doesn't matter how good the American vaccine is if a third of the people don't take it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Paul, thank you. Thanks. That was a good rant. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program about the 14th Amendment and the debt ceiling. And just kind of riddle me this one, Batman, right? The 14th Amendment reads, and I'm taking out the parts that specifically refer to pensions and bounties and for services suppressing the insurrection, because it came out of the Civil War. But the 14th Amendment reads, in part, the validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. In other words, Congress, you can't take actions that might cause the public debt not to be paid. You can't refuse to raise the debt ceiling, is how I read that. The debt ceiling, of course, didn't even exist when they wrote the 14th Amendment. That came along in 1917. But I think this is raising some really important questions, and I dig into it in this video over there. You can check it out. It's all over at thomhartmann.com. 24 minutes past the hour. Boy, there's a lot that we've been talking about here. Dana in Springfield, Illinois. Hey, Dana, thanks for listening to us on Sirius XM. What's up?
Yes, you were talking about Nixon's postponing the Paris talks. He also was taking money from foreign countries during his campaign, too.
Specifically what?
I remember reading it. I can't remember when it was. Johnson knew about it as well as the Paris thing, but he didn't want to say anything about it because he figured everybody was thinking it was sour grapes. Yeah. It's just an amazing little moment of history. And I'm in fact, I'm going to play the audio again because every American, I realize, our audience is constantly rolling over and changing. And so, many of you have heard this before, but probably many of you have not. But it's worth revisiting. When the CIA came to Lyndon Johnson in October of 1968 and said Richard Nixon has reached out through Anna Chennault, through out of New Mexico, has reached out to the South Vietnamese and said, just blow up the peace talks and I'll make you rich. The CIA told LBJ that. LBJ calls up Everett Dirksen, the major Republican and an ethical man. Back then you had ethical Republicans. The leader of the Republicans in the Senate, and has this conversation. This is on the 360, Sean. Okay, here we go.
Here's the latest information we got. The agent says that they just talked to the boss in New Mexico, and that he says that you must hold out, just hold on until after the election. We know what Q is saying to them out there. Yeah, we're pretty well informed on both ends. Now, I'm reading their hand, Everett. I don't want to get this in the campaign. That's right. And they oughtn't to be doing this. This is treason. I know. This is treason. And the Republican says, I know. And Dana, how that has been so thoroughly scrubbed from our history, I don't know. I don't know why this isn't taught in elementary, in high school history classes. The treason of Richard Nixon.
There's a lot of things that scrubbed from the history books, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and it doesn't have anything to do with critical race theory, but I guarantee you.
And I've always said that history itself taught in school is just enough to whet your appetite, do some outside reading.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully that's the case. I mean, reading history is something everybody should be doing. History is, it's our story, right? Literally, it's where the word comes from, his story. Well, now we have her story and their story and our story and but that's history. We need to know our history. And I'm telling you, this division that we're seeing right now that's killing people with COVID began with that action by Richard Nixon in '68.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
That was the year Republicans decided committing treason and killing Americans, another 20,000 Americans died in Vietnam, was an acceptable thing to do to gain political power. It's another great day to make a contribution to Free Speech TV, progressive television. We are the only progressive television of any consequence in the United States. No recycled Republicans here on this network, like you will find on others who may occasionally have a progressive point of view. This is it, right here. And it exists because of your support. And you can call now, 877-378-8669. And one of the reasons why it's a really great day to support Free Speech TV is because, God bless her, Mary in Kentucky has put up a $5,000 match. Your contributions will be doubled, dollar for dollar, up to $5,000 by Mary in Kentucky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for supporting Free Speech TV. If you are calling today, 877-378-8669, and making your contribution, it is much needed. It keeps this network going. It's basically how Free Speech TV operates. No corporate money. It's all coming from our viewers. And, you know, there's a lot of viewers out there. We need more, of course. Please reach out to your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. You know, you could even, I've gotten correspondence from people who at the very bottom under their signature line, it just says, watch Free Speech TV on Dish or Direct, channel, whatever it is, things like that. I mean, you know, there's lots of ways that you can kind of slip the message in when you're communicating with people, or if you're sending out holiday cards, you know, this time of year and that sort of thing. So, and you know, why are we supporting Free Speech TV? Because Free Speech TV is a progressive network that does embrace the progressive values that have really turned America into America over the past 100 years. I mean, just look at some of the accomplishments of the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, 877-378-8669. What has the Democratic Party brought us? How about the women's right to vote? Woodrow Wilson oversaw that one. Social Security, that was Franklin Roosevelt. The minimum wage law, Franklin Roosevelt. Actually, the next few are FDR. The minimum wage law, unemployment insurance, the Rural Electrification Act, the FDIC bank account insurance, and the GI Bill of Rights, and the Securities and Exchange Act. That was all FDR. The Marshall Plan, that was Harry Truman, as was NATO, as was the school lunch program and the Water Quality Act of 1948. The Peace Corps came from John Kennedy, the first man on the moon, John Kennedy. The Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, LBJ. Medicare, Medicaid, LBJ. The Guaranteed Pell Student Loan Program, LBJ. Operation Head Start, LBJ. Workers' Compensation Insurance, LBJ. The Motor Voter Act, Bill Clinton. The Clinton Budget Surplus, obviously Bill Clinton. The Family and Medical Leave Act, Bill Clinton. The Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama. And then, of course, look at what Joe Biden has been doing for the last year. Some just extraordinary things, including the American Rescue Plan. And now we're working on Build Back Better. So this list of Democratic accomplishments brought to you by Free Speech TV, who are offering you these special premiums right now. If you call now to make your contribution at 877-378-8669 or text FSTV to 44-321, $20 contribution, Free Speech TV bumper sticker. $50 contribution, Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag, or the Free Speech TV socks that were previously $100 value, but they're on sale for the holidays. A $75 gift to Free Speech TV. You have your choice, the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you can get an autographed copy of my newest book. Makes a great gift, by the way. The Hidden History of American Healthcare, why sickness bankrupts you and makes others insanely rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, there is the Zoom meet and greet where we get together and kind of party together for an hour. And with a $1,000 gift, there is the come to Portland and visit us once we've all figured out this pandemic thing. You know, it might be a while, but hey, $1,000 to Free Speech TV is a big deal. It means an awful lot. So if you can, you know, feel free to get in line. And of course, those are all one-time gifts. Another way that you can support Free Speech TV is by making a regular monthly contribution, and even small regular monthly contributions. You know, we've had $5 Fridays and things like that. You know, even $5 is a big deal. 10, 20, 30, whatever you could afford. You can do both. You can make a one-time contribution and a month-by-month contribution. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. So 877-378-8669 is the telephone number for Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV needs your help right now. It's not, you know, this network is not going to stay on the air without viewer support. And, you know, thank God for over 20 years, viewers have been supporting Free Speech TV. Well, thank you, actually, because for over 20 years, viewers like you have supported Free Speech TV, kept this network on the air, kept things going and rolling and all that sort of thing, kept the electrons traveling to the satellites and into your home. It's not a small thing. It's really kind of a miracle when you consider it. And that miracle only exists because you or people like you have supported this television network. So if you've never called before in particular, call now, 877-378-8669, and help out Free Speech TV. This is an extraordinary network. It's the end of the year. It's a tax-deductible contribution. And, you know, it's a great organization. There's none better. So please call. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I was recollecting that I'd seen a graph, and I just found it, that shows the number of the percentage of people of race in the United States. Whites at 61%, but only 59% of them are dying due to COVID. And blacks at 12%, but 14% are dying due to COVID. These are the COVID deaths. Right. 14% of them are black. And then you get to Hispanics, it's 17% of them in the population of the United States, but they're dying. The deaths are 18%. So when you're looking at why these southern states might be dragging their feet when it comes to COVID and trying to get their people well and stop them from dying, I think they're doing the numbers. And politically, they're saying, yeah, it's almost the same thing that Lee Atwater said. Yeah, it's hurting all of our people, but it's hurting minorities more, so we can live with that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the math that the Trump administration did on April 7th, 2020. You know, the headline was blacks are dying disproportionately to whites in the United States, and that was literally the day that the Trump administration said, okay, that's it. We're no longer going to try and stop this virus. Plus, it was all in blue states. It was all in, you know, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and Washington State. Right. And so when you sit back, and I was wondering, the reason why I even looked that up, because I say all of these southern states, these red states are letting their people die. And I was trying to find the reason why. And it turns out, even though, because most of those red states have a large black population, have the ones in the South, certainly, yes. That's not true of South Dakota or North Dakota, though. And they're killing their people too, or Idaho. They're idiots. Yeah, they're idiots. They listen to Donald Trump and they just follow along with him. They're sheep. Donald Trump just recently stated that more people died of COVID under Biden than they did under Trump. But that was a study that looked at 2020 versus 2021. And every Republican that keeps repeating that study forgets that Donald Trump was president in 2021 for 20 days. And January was the worst month for Donald Trump relative to COVID. 4,400 people were dying a day as Donald Trump was getting ready to leave office. And Biden's first day, he hit it at 4,400 also. And then it went down for Biden from there. Right. And what Trump did, he gave Biden a record of 4,000 deaths a day, and Biden has knocked it down. And it still looks like Biden may end up in his first year seeing less deaths than Donald Trump did in his last year. Yeah. But the Republicans never think very deep whenever they're making their rhetoric up. And so they're just leaving out that last month where Donald Trump, we were seeing more deaths than what happened on 9/11.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yep. It was a true tragedy. Larry, you're the numbers man. I so honor your skill with looking things up and finding the numbers and explaining them in ways that are clear to everyone. Thank you so much for the call. It's great to hear from you. Silvio in Massapequa, New York. Hey, Silvio, what's up?
How you doing, Tom?
I'm alive.
The reason I called is that I feel that a lot of the voters, Republican voters, don't really understand what authoritarianism really is. And the authoritarian bent of the Republican Party is really, if you look at the history of it, the one thing that any authoritarian cannot tolerate is dissent. And when there is dissent, there comes suppression. And I guarantee this, that if the Republicans ever get the House, the Senate, and the presidency, you can expect, little by little, suppression to occur in this country, starting with college campuses, with
it's happening
unions.
right now in red states all over the country, Silvio. You know,
Well,
on
like
college
I said,
campuses,
it'll
they're
be
afraid to teach the actual history of the United States. They're afraid to teach about global warming. It's and we saw DeSantis. I mean, I reported on this earlier in the week. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. That down in Florida, you've got all these scientists who literally working for the state, who literally were destroying their own data on COVID, so that Ron DeSantis wouldn't fire them.
Well, you can expect it to be magnified should the Republicans ever gain control.
Agreed.
And you'll see incidents like Kent State not happen once, but happen several times.
Yeah.
You'll see the worst kind of conflict against unions, back to what it was in the 1930s.
Right.
This is what you can expect. And if I see any person who is involved in education or is a union member voting for the Republicans, I say basically, why don't you get a knife and cut your own throat?
Yeah, it really is sad. By the way, Louise and I last night watched the last show from John Oliver's show, the last show of the season. And it was all about the union busting, the professional union busting that Target and Amazon and all these other companies, and Starbucks now, are bringing in. I just want to highly recommend that to everybody. But Silvio, I think you're right. And I think that these guys don't, at some level, they understand authoritarianism, but they think that it's a good thing. It's like the strict parent. They don't realize that eventually it's going to come for them, too. And when you look at countries where authoritarianism rules, that's the tragic outcome in almost every case. Thanks a lot for the call, Silvio. It's great to hear from you. David in Elkhart, Indiana. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. I don't want to talk about Lauren Boebert. I want to talk about the woman who's running against her.
Cool. Tell me.
Her name is Sol Sandoval. She's a progressive Democrat running in that district. And she's just wonderful, just a very nice person. I do not work for her campaign, but
I'm assuming there has not yet been a primary. She's not the official candidate yet. She is one of several?
Yes, but I believe she's leading in that primary right now, and she's a progressive's dream. Everything Boebert is not. She actually finished high school.
Wow.
And
impressive.
College even.
Yeah.
And
wow.
she's a qualified candidate. I think you should have her on your show. She's someone you would really like to talk to.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David. We do have candidates on after they've won primaries, but unless it's a primary that I personally know the players, like we did with here in Portland a while ago, I don't do primary candidates.
I understand.
But what's her name again? Sol Sandoval?
Yeah, S-O-L Sandoval.
Yeah. Okay.
Sol Sandoval. Sol is how we'd pronounce it.
Yeah.
And she's worth checking out. Check her out.
Well, I will do that. Thanks a lot for the call, David. I appreciate the heads up. Peggy in Odessa, Missouri. Hey, Peggy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine, yes.
Great. Because I want to read something to you. I stopped talking to my family who loves Trump so much several months ago.
Oh, my.
And I wasn't going to send them a Christmas card. But then I got to thinking that my one way to say something very important to them, to make them think about what they're doing. And I thought I would pick a verse from the Bible, and I don't know my Bible very well, but I thought I would pick a verse that would, make them think twice about what they're doing. And so I asked one of my Christian groups to give me some ideas. And one what is Deuteronomy 27:19 says, "Cursed be anyone who deprives the immigrant of justice." I just thought, maybe other people might, think about doing this.
Peggy, I congratulate you and applaud your efforts, but I guarantee it's not going to change their minds.
Yeah.
It's so sad, though, that you have family members who got sucked into the Fox News Trump trap.
Yeah. Well, Breitbart, I think, started them.
That's like heroin.
I mean, they've been in it for years.
Yeah.
They showed me a paper several years ago, and I read it, and it's like, what in the world? And I just threw it away. I didn't even think anything about it. And then in comes Trump.
Yeah. I get it. Well, Peggy, I wish you the very best. Happy holidays to you and your family. And if you're sending Christmas cards, I guess Merry Christmas would be the appropriate thing to say to you. And I hope we can all hope and send good vibes and prayers to you and your family that they see the light. Peggy, thank you very much for the call. John in Idaho Springs, Colorado. Hey, John, what's up?
Oh, hey, I just wanted to comment on that timeline you went through with our presidents, and it seems like the Republicans really bear down and they produce the most conflict when we have a green economy guy running, first Carter, then Gore, now Biden. And I think it's really obvious what I'm saying, and it seems like the same old story that everything has to do with energy control and that everything else that's going on is just a big distraction, and it's just, it's trying to create a divide between us. And the only good thing I can see with all of this is that we finally did get a greenish guy in there.
Yeah. Well, and it took a crisis to get us there, but and let us not forget that, starting in the 50s with the John Birch Society, Fred Koch made his fortune with the Soviet Union drilling for oil. And then, came back to the United States and became an oil baron, and his sons were oil billionaires. There's only one I think who's still alive. And, there's a bunch of other fossil fuel billionaires. The Hunt brothers were fossil fuel. They were the richest men in the world, and they were fossil fuel. They weren't billionaires back then, multimillionaires. And, they've got a particular axe to grind, which is fossil fuels. It's the source of their income. It's the source of their revenue. So it shouldn't surprise us that it's playing out the way that you described, John. Also, energy, as I think maybe this is your point, John, energy is the key to everything. You can't run a society without energy. So whoever controls the energy controls the society. And if everybody has solar panels on their roof, nobody can control them, right? We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Picking up your calls here as we head toward the last 15 minutes of the program. Stick around. And welcome back. Kirk in Bremerton, Washington. Hey, Kirk. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to say thanks to Free Speech for providing the platform. Thanks to you for providing the show. And then thanks to you personally for having the courage to get up and be our flashlight in the wilderness every day. I think, unfortunately, as we go towards 2024, you're going to become increasingly valuable. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Kirk. Your acknowledgement is appreciated. What's up? That's not what you called about, is it?
No, I wanted to, do what is done so well on your show, and that's call out people on our side who betray us. And I don't know if you've talked about these two since yesterday, but I wanted to mention the naked opportunist Joe Manchin and the faux populist John Tester and how they voted against Joe Biden's federal vaccine mandate yesterday.
Yeah, Yeah, I did mention that in the first hour of the program, and it's disappointing. I do think that, they both represent states that Donald Trump won overwhelmingly. And the vaccine mandate is something that will be used as a political weapon against them. So I think they were just disarming their opponents. It was also a meaningless vote. It's never going to get through the House. And even if it did get through the House, it'll be vetoed by Joe Biden. So I'm not quite as, I'm not experiencing quite as much angst about that as I am about the fact that Joe Manchin is trying to stop the filibuster when it comes to things like voting rights.
Exactly, but I'm concerned that, John Tester seems to be becoming increasingly emboldened to perhaps show his colors more. And,
he represents a red state. At a certain point, you've got to expect that. And if you want to have a Democrat from a red state, that's probably the kind of Democrat you're going to get.
Does he have to cozy up to the banks like he has in the past, though?
Well, I'm guessing that they're probably funding his campaigns. He's not, John Tester does not pretend to be a progressive.
Yeah. Well, he puts his farmer jacket on and
Oh, he's representing farmers, but the farmers, are tend to be very conservative people these days.
Well, so, I know that. I come from the family. But I don't know. Just wanted to bounce that off you. Thanks for the perspective. And once again, thanks for doing this every day.
My pleasure, Kirk. Thank you very much. It's good to hear from you. Mike in Dayton, Ohio. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Well, I have to tell you, I enjoy your show, but I have trouble with the Republican-Democratic dichotomy.
Give me an alternative.
Well, the small alternative in small letters is Green Party, But, I cannot agree with, I did not vote for Trump, nor Biden, nor Clinton, because I just couldn't in my heart vote for these people. I just don't, there's too many things I disagree with on both parties. And so I think there's a large population like myself who are kind of disgusted with the whole paradigm.
I disagree, Mike. I know that is the major message. If you read the Mueller report, the major message that the Russian trolls were promoting through social media back in 2016 was that both parties are the same, both parties are corrupt, both parties are disgusting, don't even bother to vote. And you did exactly what the Putin administration was telling Americans they should do. You chose not to participate in our politics or not to vote for one of the two major parties.
They're the same. I said they're not polarized, and I don't want to. No, they're not. They're highly polarized. And you still say it, but they're not the same.
Okay. Well, thank you for acknowledging.
A middle of the road alternative.
Okay, Mike. Thanks for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. And welcome back, Ron in Berrien Springs, Michigan. Hey, Ron, thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's up?
Tom, your predictions of dire consequences if we lose the election, which I totally agree with, and I think we may be on that path. But what I believe the scenario will happen, if the Republicans take control of everything and they institute fascism, the military, the CIA, and the FBI, like they did with Trump when he asked the military to perform a coup d'etat, General Milley said no. We're going to stand with the nation. We have to hope, and we have to fill our ranks with our young people that will follow the orders of their officers. And I believe that what they will do, they will declare martial law.
Here's the thing, Ron, and this is, I encourage you to read the history of a country that actually went through this. For example, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by John, I'm forgetting his name now, the guy who wrote it, but in any case, it comes incrementally. It comes in little tiny pieces over and over and over, just an inch every day. And then, at the end of the year, all of a sudden everything has changed. And that's how they do it. That's how it happened all through the Trump administration. There was no one great moment where everybody went, holy cow, he did that. There were all these little moments where different constituencies were saying, okay, now he's undoing the pollution rules, and now he's undoing the banking regulations, and now he's promoting the fascism, in the media, and now whatever it may be, right? And every step along the way all adds up to fascism or neo-fascism. But there isn't that one great shocking moment, and I don't think there will be if Trump takes over. I think that they're going to do it the same way that Orban did in Hungary, the same way Putin did in Russia, the same way that Hitler did in Germany, Mussolini in Italy. Mussolini was arguably a little more of a shock, but even there, as he continued to rule over his first 2 years, it was very incremental, and that's the problem. That's the crisis.
Tom, I think, but what I think you are doing is you are diminishing the knowledge of our leadership, our military leadership, and our progressive leadership. Yes, we see these historical events and how they transpire, but this country is different. This country is unlike any other. And I've been predicting the Civil War for a long time, and I've been through the Vietnam War, and I want to live through this Civil War too. Plain and simple. If it happens, I want to be there. And I want to defend my country, just like my son and his friends.
Well, let's try not to have a civil war, Ron. Civil wars are the most brutal.
We cannot stop what's going to happen.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true, Ron. I think we can stop what's going to happen, or at least what they want to happen, I think we have an obligation to stop it. Ron, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. This is kind of a bummer, but yeah, I get it. Brian in Joliet, Illinois. Hey, Brian, what's up?
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Good. I have a master's degree in philosophy, and a branch of philosophy is the history of psychology, and this business or talk from the Surgeon General about the mental health of millions needing mental health. I think first ones need to talk about what mental health means, what form of psychological treatment one would get. Certainly not the psychology of the evil Sigmund Freud. If one talks about psychiatrists, they're generally known as pill doctors who know virtually nothing about what their meds do to the human body. Then one needs to talk about the underlying concrete.
So, Brian, what's the point of all this?
Pardon?
I get it. You're not a fan of the psychology industry or the psychiatry industry, but what's your point?
One has not a fan of the psychiatric community. Psychologists are fine except for Freudians. Then one has to talk about the underlying economic concrete conditions, what 50% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck with $1,000 to spare, what horrible things, anxiety and despair, that kind of thing does to the creative health of the human mind,
and the society. Brian, I'm still not understanding why you called. So thank you very much for the call. But I'm going to move on to Pat in Evanston, Illinois. Hey, Pat, what's up?
Hi, Pat. Thank you, Tom, for having me on. I just wanted to talk about that fact that it comes in 1,000 cuts. Incrementally. What is that saying that? They went after these people, I did nothing. They went after that group of people, I did nothing.
Yeah, Pastor Niemöller.
This is what has been happening.
Yeah.
Pardon me. That's what happens. You don't pay attention to it because it didn't happen to you, and before you know it, it's happened to everyone, and you're stuck.
Yes.
You're sunk.
Yes.
Because you don't care about immigration, or you don't care about Black Lives Matter, or you don't care about the Jewish situation, or you don't care about blah, 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 because it's not you until it gets to you, and then it's too late.
Yeah, very well said, Pat. Thank you. That was the perfect punctuation mark to the hour. Thank you. And that's the end of the show, too. So we'll see you tomorrow, the end of the show for today. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Never has been. Never will be. And in order for democracy to work in this country, it needs everyone participating, which includes you. So please get out there, get active, tag, you're in. help strengthen and reinforce our democracy. Please tag you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at hellofresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.